pressure looks good.
Doubling up. Roger, roll with Atlantic. Flight outside speed off.
Yikes. You bet. Okay. We don't need any more of these.
What's up, everybody? Hey, Tank Watchers. It's me, the person who is talking right now, Jack Beyer. How's it going? You are joining us today. We are going live in anticipation of a cryo proof of Starship serial number 11. Let me know you can hear me fine. Give me a 5x5 in chat. But yeah, this is Starship SN11 that you're currently looking at, and we are hoping to see a cryo proof of it today. And I am joined, as usual, by Das. What's up, Das?
What's up, Jack? How you doing, dude?
No complaints.
You ready to watch some tanks?
I am ready and raring to watch some tanks. And I'm also joined... Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I just said excellent.
Excellent. And we're also joined by Michael Baylor, as usual. What's up, Michael?
How's it going, everyone? And hopefully we can already see some frost forming, so hopefully this will not take too long. You can also see some vapors under Starship, so that confirms that there is a propellant flow, or not propellant, but liquid nitrogen flowing into Starship at this time, which is a good sign.
Excellent. That's what we like to hear. Cryoproof, meaning they're going to fill up Starship serial number 11's tanks with cryogenic liquid nitrogen and basically make sure this big steel balloon can hold pressure under cryogenic temperatures. And of course, we also have Mary out there in the field. Oh, look at that big vent.
Oh, wow.
As usual, she is out there spooling up a camera feed, so look out for that here shortly. But thanks to her for being on the ball and standing by to go live all day, as well as shooting a daily video, which we should have ready to go shortly. But yeah, that's what we're looking at right now. Cryoproof, Starship serial number 11. Yeah, I'll jump into the panel and start picking out some questions and stuff. I guess I'll head one question off at the pass. Yes, I am still in Boca Chica. Let's see, jump into the panel here. That's what we call our fancy software that Michael has written up so that we can pull your questions out. Remember, if you have a question you want to ask at NASASpaceflight before you type whatever your question is, that helps it sort of pop out amongst the fray. Let's see. Somebody asking, what is the timeline for serial number 111? But I think, based on another question they asked shortly after, they meant SN11. We don't know SpaceX doesn't publish things like, oh, this is when we're going to do this is when we're going to do that. A lot of this is based on inference, right? So we are inferring that they need to do a cryoproof, and they need to do a static fire, and then they will attempt a flight, obviously, if they have the FAA's blessing. So it'll be a little bit. They still need to do a static fire, otherwise it's a milestone-based thing. They will not be flying until they static fire, and they won't static fire until they cryoproof. So I think the earliest we could see serial number 11 fly is perhaps sometime next week, but it really matters a lot whenever that static fire happens and the results of it. We've seen a lot of Raptor engines swapped out after static fires, and that could, impose a small delay. But good question.
Yeah, that's Jack. That's always what we get. People are like, "Oh, is it gonna fly today? What's it gonna do? Is it this, that, the other?" And I don't want to sound like a cop out, but until they get a static fire under their belt, it's really hard to say when it's gonna fly. You know what I mean? Like, that's such a sad question to have to give. But I really, who knows the way these tests have gone, when it's gonna fly until they get a successful static fire. You know?
Yep, you're right.
I hate being right about that. I wish it was flying when it said it was going to fly, but I need to see fire and dust come out of the bottom of it first. Well, not dust coming. Dust shouldn't come out of the bottom. The dust should come from the ground around it because the Raptors created thrust and made a big dust cloud. That's what I'm looking for.
I don't know. They might be switching propellants to dust. You never know.
Dust. They're going to pressurize. It's not autogenous pressurization. It's actually dustogenous pressurization. Causes less problems with those header tanks.
You got me. I was like, oh, what? And then no, you got me.
Folks, I made that up. That's not true. They're not putting dust in the rocket. There should be no foreign objects in there anywhere.
No FOD, please. No FOD. I am not seeing anything on the panel. It looks like it might have crashed for me. I'm going to close that window and reload it. Is anyone getting questions and super chats and stuff on there? It's just blank for me.
The same. Yeah, I don't see anything there, Michael. I tried to hard refresh it, and I got nothing in our handy dandy software.
All right, no worries, no worries. That'll be sorted out shortly, I'm sure.
Oh my
so
gosh,
yeah, cryo-proof.
Actually, look at chat, Jack. Jeez.
It takes time to connect, Jack. That's normal.
Oh, no worries. I shall be more patient. Let's see. So yeah, cryo-proof. First step, make sure the thing can hold pressure. Let's see. You can see today there's a little bit more fog, haze, smoke, whatever it is today. Not the most clear, pristine day, but look at that. We can start to see a little bit of frost forming there, sort of in between the two aft flaps. Do you guys see that?
Yeah, you can see the line just there on near the aft flaps. There's a little sort of a lighter line where that frost has started to form at the bottom of the LOX tank, right? It's the LOX tank on the bottom, the methane tank on top.
Sure enough, at least on Starship. It's reversed on Super Heavy.
Yep.
Just because they want to keep us on our toes, you know what I mean? Let's see. Kevin asking, what is a cryoproof? Cryoproof means they are checking to make sure the pressure vessel, is basically two tanks, right, can hold pressure. So you fill it full of a cryogenic liquid and make sure that it can, because materials behave different at different temperatures. And you can have an ambient proof. That's where you would just, fill it full of inert gas, like gaseous nitrogen, and make sure it doesn't pop. But the cryogenic proof is to make sure that it will behave the same way when it's full of propellant, which is also cryogenic. Both liquid methane and liquid oxygen are similar temperatures to liquid nitrogen when they are liquid. Let's see, we've got a super chat from Rough Rider Show. Thank you, Rough Riders. One of those common names we see pop up every stream. They say, just a general question. What else down there in South Padre Island is there to do other than seeing Starship, of course? Planning on going down in May. Well, for one, you can get surf lessons from our friends at Space Padre. Gene and Rachel are excellent surf instructors. They even managed to teach me how to surf, and I am accident prone. Make no buts about it. I am just accident prone. There's also, the Rio Grande, like wildlife preserve down here is really amazing for the amount of wildlife that there is. There's all kinds of birds, and it's absolutely beautiful. So, the beaches, not like there's South Padre Beach, right, where it's sort of more of a human beach and like sort of touristy. But there's also Boca Chica Beach, which is more like it's mostly fishing people and various families and stuff visiting, but the amount of wildlife in and around Boca Chica cannot be overstated. So that's kind of like a nice fun thing to do. There's a sable palm reserve. There is various other beach related activities, like you can go on a dolphin watching boat, stuff like that. Yeah. Good question. Yeah, and pirate boats. I see chat talking about the pirate, but you can go out for a ride on the pirate ship. Yar. Let's see. What else we got? Trek001, thank you for the £5. They say, too early to press F for SN11. Yeah, way too early. What's wrong with you? Journey Bunch, thanks for the new membership, Journey. Chris K, thank you for the $5. They say, I'm loving that face on Starhopper. Yeah, the face that the lights make is nothing short of delightful. Leonard Brahms, thank you for the $5. They say, will serial number 11 launch be more successful than serial number 10? Thank you, guys. Mars is getting closer. Yes, I'm going to just bet the farm and say yes. The Journey Bunch, let's say, is it possible? Thank you for the super chat, Journey, saying, is it possible to live in Boca Chica? I currently work remote and would love to witness the action live. It is not really possible to live in Boca Chica. There's only a few residents remaining, and I don't think any of them are renting places out. But you can stay in Brownsville and you can stay on South Padre Island. So there's plenty of options and plenty of places that you can stay.
Jack, I would jump in and say if you work remotely and rely on the internet, Boca Chica is not where you want to live. It is very tough to get an internet signal out there.
I mean, even South Padre Island. I mean, big part of my work with NASASpaceflight, right, is doing the editing of the daily videos, or at least helping out on the editing of them. And it's extremely hard for me to even load a video preview and know, oh, this clip 004 is this. A lot of times I don't even have good enough signal for that. So, of course, obligatory when Starlink. Dendis Nye with a Canadian $100. Thank you so much. They say, to help cover some of Jack's food cost, how's the grub in Boca Chica? Really good, actually. I do love me some seafood, and there's no shortage of it here, it being a beach town. Although, I guess if you're asking specifically about the grub in Boca Chica, that's a little bit different. I mean, I can't really say other than the food in either Brownsville or South Padre Island. There's no restaurants in Boca Chica other than the SpaceX one, which I have not had the pleasure of going to. I don't even know. Can the public go to that? I'm not sure how that works. But thank you so much, Dendis. That's a boatload of money. And yeah, this trip is starting to drag on a little bit, so that'll definitely help. Thank you. Let's see. Let's look for some regular questions here. Tammy asking, I thought the ground service equipment they were building was propellant tanks, but they installed other tanks this week. Do you know what they're building? I don't know, but I also assume that they are building propellant tanks, and I think those other littler tanks that they installed are just part of the whole tank farm system, one way or another. I'm not quite sure why they need littler ones and bigger ones, but yeah, I do think they are building some massive propellant tanks. Good question. It's going to be interesting to see that orbital tank farm come together. The Best is asking, does the cryoproof go to nominal pressures or over usual pressures to make sure that the tanks are sound? That's a good question. If anyone wants to chime in, feel free. I would assume nominal pressures for something like a Starship prototype, but like the test tanks, like SN7.2, I'm pretty sure, they go to overpressure on those to see sort of what the upper limit is and how strong they are. But it wouldn't really make sense to do that with a full Starship with engines attached, and all of the other expensive and time-consuming bits. That's sort of what those test tanks are for, right? So I think it's safe to say nominal pressures. Good question. Julio, thank you for the €5. They say, thanks for your dedication and passion, guys. Will SN15 change the header tank design significantly after SN8, 9, and 10 failures, or is it the same? That's something we'll kind of just have to wait for an Elon tweet to find out. He did sort of allude to perhaps some changes in that area the other day on Twitter. So we'll just have to keep an eye on that space and see what, if any, information he ends up sharing in that regard. I sure hope SN11 is able to stick the landing, and I sure hope SN15, whatever design changes come with it, are cool. I'm excited for SN15. Let me put it that way. Midnight 1 thank you for the $5 to say any word on landing leg design options for Starship. No, not yet. Although that's one of those things where I'm so curious how that's going to play out. Elon even mentioned something about catching Starship in the same way that they want to catch the boosters on Twitter the other day. Although I sort of think that was more of a troll, but that remains to be seen. We'll just have to wait and see in that regard. L. Cole, thank you for the €5. They say, hi, is SpaceX planning to perform the same 10-kilometer test with SN15, or are they going to next level? If not, when will they do? That's a good question. I don't think we have any word on what SN15 will attempt, but certainly it seems like they are in the mid to high altitude realm right now, for varying definitions of high. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they stick the landing with 11, what they then feel comfortable doing with SN15. Sorry, I don't have a better answer for you, but we'll have to wait and see. Musical Wolves, thank you for the $5. They say, can you compare Lockheed XFV-1's Salmon's landing to Starship landing? What is an XFV-1 Salmon? I'm just going to Google this out loud on the stream right now. XFV-1. This is really compelling content, huh? XFV-1 Salmon. What the heck? Oh, it's the vertical takeoff propeller plane from the days of black and white. 1954? Okay, how does this compare to Starship? I feel unqualified to say. They're both wacky, let's put it that way. They're similar in their wackiness. Thank you for the super chat, Musical Wolves. Kage Tenant, or Cage Tenant, thank you for the £5. They say, we Centaur best the moon, then Saturn our hands a while, but... What?
Nice.
It's like a pun poem. All right, you're not. I'm against puns. Foot down. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you for the super chat there, buddy. Billy Day, thank you for the $25. Wow. Say, hey guys, just wanted to say I love your live streams and articles. Shout out to the news site. We have a news site. We're not just a YouTube channel, and we post cool, informative articles. So yeah, keep your eyes on NASASpaceflight.com actual website if you are so inclined to learn about things as they happen, because news. But thank you, Billy Day. That's awesome of you to say. And Raj, thank you for the $5. They say, if I drive an RV down to Boca Chica, where can I park legally that will have the best site for the next Starship launch? For how long can one park? Isla Blanca Park is the answer. There's an RV park right here on the south tip of Padre Island. So you have actually a view of the launch and landing site. I'm not quite sure what the length time limit is on that, but definitely look into South Padre Island and Isla Blanca Park. That's probably your best bet. Here's kind of one we get a lot. Atheo Gaming 07 asking, any idea what the first Starship to orbit is? What serial number? I'm going to guess 18, just because. That's the number I've been guessing for like months now, and who knows if that's right or not. It's a total guess, but 18. Does anybody else have any ideas or inklings?
18 is good. It's like, you turn 18, you're old enough to fly to orbit, you get your orbit license, it's fine. You could go to Orbit War or whatever, smoke orbit tobacco.
Orbit.
Orbit, there you go. It'll be SN21 that actually gets the drink first, though, I think.
Yes, there you go. It gets the drink. I got nothing. Yeah, don't smoke orbit tobacco, kids. Let's see. Steve Warwick, thank you for the $5. Really hoping to make the drive from Waco to see serial number 11 launch and land. I already told my boss I'd be giving very short notice for my days off. I hope you get to see it, buddy. And I chuckle because I do wonder about the surely increasing amount of bosses around the country who are being told by their employees, hey, I'm going to go try and see this thing, but it's not really on a set timeline, so just heads up. Yeah, so good luck, buddy, and hopefully your boss is accommodating in that regard. I've sort of spent the last several years of my life molding my schedule around covering these types of activities, and at a certain point, you just have to bite the bullet and accept that schedules are uncertain. And if you want to catch this stuff, you kind of have to figure out a way, work and life-wise, to accommodate it. It's tricky. Not for everybody, but hopefully good luck to you there. Bosses can be super accommodating most of the time, but just don't push it. And Mike Jacobs, thank you for the $5. They say, thanks guys, appreciate the time the entire team spends on bringing us the latest space events. Well, thank you, Mike. It is because of your support and everybody's support, all of our members, everybody that watches the ads, hits the like button, hits the subscribe button. We couldn't be doing this without your support. So thank you to everybody for the super chats and for watching and for caring. It's awesome that you all care about spaceflight enough to tune in to a cryo proof of a Starship. It's wild that that people want to tank watch to the extent that they do, and it makes me so happy. So thanks for the support, and thanks everybody for watching. Let's see, RDev asking, opinion on serial number 15 being an orbital Starship. I feel like that's pretty soon considering it's next up after 11.
Yeah, I agree, Jack. I think probably at least a couple more after 15. Hard to say exactly when, but we haven't even seen a Starship with a full heat shield yet, so I don't think 15 has a full heat shield because we've seen it start to be assembled in the mid-bay, and we have not seen sections covered in heat shield tiles. So the first orbital Starship, I think it's fair to say, will have an entire heat shield so that they can test that re-entry.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I was wondering for a while there if 15 was going to get a full heat shield, but yeah, you're right. It seems like at this point it will not. But they are definitely, I mean, we've seen it. Tyler the other day did that really great tweet that showed how the heat shields are growing over time from 8 to 9 to 10 and now 11. So it's only a matter of time before we get a vehicle with a full shield. Let's see. Rob Turner says, when hop corn?
What?
I don't know. I mean, the other day when you guys went down that corn rabbit hole, I was just absolutely dying. It was side-splittingly funny to me. That was amazing. So I'm probably referencing that if I had to guess. Jacob, thank you for the £5. They say, thanks for the awesome content. And could we see a static fire right after cryo? Know when 15 will be done, and I don't think they would static fire immediately after a cryo. I wonder, Das, what do you think they have to do in terms of purging the tanks after something like this? Like, do you think they have to like figure out a way to get all that liquid nitrogen or gaseous nitrogen or whatever residue out of the tanks? Do you think it's enough to just let it boil off and fill it up with propellant cedar, or
I think
how do you think that all works?
There's got to be some sort of like flushing procedure or something like that where you empty out most of what you've got and then you let it to just sit open or something like that, or you put something else into it. There's bound to be some acceptable limit, right? Where you put nitrogen through it and then, okay, we emptied out all the nitrogen. We know there's not liquid nitrogen sitting in the bottom of it. Maybe there's some gaseous nitrogen still floating inside, but we just replace that with whatever's supposed to be in the tank, so the oxygen and the methane, right? So
yeah.
There's got to be some sort of normal process that they go through, because it's not like they pull the tank to vacuum. It would collapse. You can't do that. But before they go to the next step. So there has to be some acceptable amount of liquid nitrogen that could stay inside of it, I guess,
Yeah. Wow, look at all that venting going on. Does that look like it's coming from the mount itself?
That definitely looks lower than we normally think.
Yeah.
That looks like it's coming from the ground surface equipment where it climbs up the side of the mount. That's an interesting spot.
That's curious.
Interesting. Angle is just a little different. I mean, it definitely looks like it's originating. It doesn't look like it's starting up high and then falling down. It looks like it's coming from the pillar. Yeah, look at that angle.
Huh.
It looks like it's coming from the quick disconnect area, doesn't it?
It does look like that.
Yeah, it does. It seems to be coming underneath.
Would it do us any good to zoom this camera in a little bit more? I know it can get to about half Starship size, but I know
Yep.
the visibility is tough out there. The haze or mist. Look at that. Huh. Well, you can't authoritatively say that that's any sort of problem, but it is something that isn't what we normally see. I seem to remember a static fire test where we saw something that was a little bit different than we had normally seen, but it seemed like it continued to proceed.
Oh, come on, focus. Right when I switch the camera. I'll work on that.
Okay, good. You work on that. So I'm not sure, Jack. That it looks like it's prolific in sort of continuous. It's not like a
Yeah.
one-time vent. It's like a continuous venting.
I mean, I'm completely guessing here, but that just makes me wonder, like, did a pipe let go? I
don't
mean,
know.
if it did, obviously we'd probably see crews head back to the pad pretty immediately, but it's very curious.
Well,
I wonder
it
what we're looking at right now.
Depends on which pipe let go. I mean,
Yeah,
you know,
true,
if
very
that's a
true.
LOX pipe, sure. They'd have to see how they can shut that down to stop that flow from the tank farm. If it's a methane pipe, well, we don't want that to be a methane pipe. But certainly they have some, if this is off nominal, because again, we can't even say that it's off nominal. It just looks like something we haven't really seen before. If it is off nominal, certainly they have some way to shut that down. Interesting.
Huh.
It really
Yeah, I mean, for
does
all we
look-
know, they could be doing a planned test of some component, like maybe Michael said the quick disconnect or something.
Yeah. The interesting thing is, to me, it definitely looks like it's got a lot of volume, it's continuous, and it doesn't seem to be directional or controlled. Like when it comes out of a vent, we know it's coming out of a vent. The vent is shaped like this. It comes out in this spurt coming. You know what I mean? We know what the venting looks like. And then the trivents, when the trivents activate, we can tell sort of what's coming out of the trivents, and we get that cascade sometimes. It looks like a waterfall when it's more dense. But this, I'm not exactly sure what that is. Huh.
Yeah, it's kind of... It seems sort of sporadic and out of control, like you said. It doesn't seem like a vent we've seen before, but it could just be some vent under Starship, and that's kind of what it looks like from the outside. It's hard to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just sort of perplexed. Interesting. I mean, if we see it shut off and we see the frost line on Starship start to climb up again, we know, everything's fine. I'm just curious what will happen next. Good old-fashioned tank watching.
Yeah, I'm watching the header tank up at the top. I'm watching the frost line there at the bottom of the LOX tank at the top of the skirt. This the frost line is sort of right in the middle of the rear flaps, and just seeing if there's any change. But that's definitely a different sort of venting? Question mark? I'm gonna put a question mark after that. You know.
Yeah, venting?
Venting? Cool. You got to go up at the end to indicate that it's a question.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. Jump back into the panel here while we wait to sort of figure out what we're looking at. Okay, see, that looks more vehicle side.
It does seem to have slowed down or stopped now. Although if I go back to Mary's angle, from this angle you can kind of see a little bit of vapors, but from Mary's angle it looks worse. So I think it might just be honestly the cold liquid nitrogen that is causing a lot of vapor to form around Starship. I don't think it's coming from a particular spot.
That's just weird because
It doesn't look like it's coming from the mount or from the ground service pipes right at this point. Now it just looks like
more.
now it just looks like there's condensation sort of in that like eddy between the two flaps right there at the bottom of the barrel. That's really interesting.
But that's also
Yeah, that's
not a
venting
tank.
right there from
That
the
looks like venting.
normal. Yeah, that's like the normal vent area we sometimes see.
The weird thing about that is that that's the skirt. that's not a fuel, that's not tankage on the other side of that. So there's not locks on the other side. Like below that white line, you could really see the white frost line here from the beach angle. And from that white frost line down is the skirt. And so I wouldn't expect like massive amounts of condensation to be coming off the skirt, because that's just air on the other side. There's no locks on the other side down the skirt. There's raptors on the other side, I guess, but they're nowhere near the edges of the skirt. But that's a definite vent. That's coming out of like a vent hole, like an actual valve. You can actually see some, look at the colors on the tank there as well, the LOX tank up above the frost line. That frost line is really obvious from here. And you can see some condensation forming on that LOX tank. Or at least just different reflections there.
Yeah, I see a couple different questions, like is serial number 11 in trouble? What's happening? I don't think it's in trouble. We're just sort of waiting to see what's going on. I mean, there's no propellants involved, there's no methane involved, or at least there shouldn't be. Oh god, famous last words. Yeah, it's just cryogenic liquid nitrogen and just some condensation at this point that is different condensation than we have previously seen, but nothing dangerous.
Yeah, we should probably talk about that, Jack. I mean, we have the understanding that this is supposed to be a cryo-proof test. So a cryo-proof test is where you put super cold liquids into the rocket to make sure that it'll stay structurally sound when it's got the super cold liquids in it, right? That's a cryo-proof test. But for cryo-proof tests, they usually use liquid nitrogen, which is an inert gas. It's not something that's going to explode. Certainly it has energy stored in pressure, but the energy of pressure is not an awful lot of energy when you're talking about this sort of scale and this amount of liquid nitrogen. So we're not talking about like liquid methane where you have a liquid methane leak. That's a big deal. The reason they do the proof test with nitrogen is because it's safer. So our understanding is this is supposed to be liquid nitrogen that they're working with, and so we wouldn't have like a, what's the right way to say it, like a flammable explosion risk. It would be maybe it could certainly pop. It could certainly get a leak. I mean, Starship could crumble. There's all sorts of things that could happen if it structurally fails during the cryo test. That's why they do the cryo tests, right? But as of right now, it just looks like they've got some, hopefully our understanding, liquid nitrogen in there. And
yeah, see, now it looks like it's coming out of one of the tri-vents, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That skirt vent location. You can also see there's a line of condensation further up now.
Mm-hmm. Sort of that diagonal line, right, Mike?
Yeah. Yeah. So.
Interesting. I wonder if they're chilling down one of the raptors for some reason.
Still not seeing much on the methane tank, which is usually how these play out. Usually we see the liquid oxygen tank get quite frosty first, and then the methane tank gets frosty during these cryogenic proof tests. But a couple more super chats. Sarah says, happy birthday for yesterday, Jack. Hashtag Jack Fan Club. If you're in chat, yesterday was Jack's birthday, so why doesn't everybody wish Jack a happy birthday?
Thanks for that, Sarah and Michael. I appreciate
Happy birthday, Jack.
Grayson with $10. Absolutely love all your broadcasts. What payload do you think will be the first Starship to go to Mars? Or sorry, what payload do you think will be on the first Starship to go to Mars? I think any sort of equipment to help sustain future Mars missions. So whether that's equipment to build the technologies needed to create propellant on Mars, or whether that's equipment to be like a habitat for people to live in, or something along those lines. Any sort of things that could help with a Mars settlement are likely going to be on the first starships, I think. What do you think, Jack?
Snacks. Definitely
Snacks.
snacks. That would help, right? That would help the first settlement.
Yep.
I mean, I have a feeling that Tesla's going to put like a Elon's going to put a meme payload in there and like fire it to Mars with half meme payload and half cameras to take pictures of the meme payload. If I had to guess, that's what I would guess.
I'm generally inclined to agree with you there, but I also wonder if, perhaps, this is a big perhaps, the journey to Mars would be sort of big enough that they would, and just, time intensive and cost intensive enough that they would not even go with the meme payload. They would just straight up send something useful. Not saying a meme payload wouldn't be useful in its own respect. It totally would be, because it gets people excited and interested. But yeah, I do wonder what that first payload will be, and I sort of secretly hope it's not just a meme payload. First Starship to orbit? Yeah, sure. Send up a Tesla Semi or something. I don't care. But first Starship to Mars hopefully takes something useful.
The reason I think they're going to go with just a meme payload, and I say meme payload, I mean like sending a Cybertruck or something like that, right? A huge wheel of cheese or whatever. I don't want the Starship going to Mars to be delayed because of the development of the payload. So you're talking about, we're going to send snacks, we're going to send, Sabatier processors, or we're going to, something that's useful. I have a feeling that they're going to want to get the Starship on the way to Mars when the Starship is ready to go to Mars, just to prove the concept. You know what I mean? Like, the whole
totally.
thing, no need to unload anything. You get over there, you get it all the way down, you try to take it back off again without risking either the schedule or anything else waiting for, you know what I mean? Like something else to be developed. Like, here's a HAB section that needs to be developed. Oh, we got to wait on that before we launch. I don't see Elon waiting around for anything else to be ready before he shoots his first shot at Mars. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. And I to that end, I could even see the first payload on a Starship to Mars being Starship itself. Literally just being like, look, we landed a Starship on Mars. Done. I mean, that alone is an extremely huge feat and useful activity. So if it happens to be carrying anything as well, bonus, icing on the cake.
Yeah, that's exactly where I'm going with that. Like, the first payload to Mars is hopes and dreams, or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, the fact that we got a Starship to Mars, and there it is. Here's pictures of it sitting on Mars. Like, we sent a camera drone that jumped out the side just so that we could get third-person pictures of Starship on Mars, or something like that, is what I'm thinking,
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be awesome. That would fit the bill for sure.
Yeah.
Let's see, we're super behind on Super Chats, so we'll go through some more here. Thank you, everybody, for the support. Chris Brisen, thank you for the the $5. We say, Jack, if you find yourself with time to kill, check out the Sea Turtle Hospital. Helped SpaceX in recent cold stun turtle rescues. Yes, I've driven past that place, Sea Turtle Inc., a couple times. I'm not sure what their COVID visitation policies are or what, but that'd be fun to stop by and see the turtles. Thanks for the support and thanks for the suggestion, Chris. Dennis Bonk, thanks for the new membership. Michael, thank you for the 12 or 129 check. Is it Czech kroners? I forget which countries are kroners and which aren't.
Well, there's Norwegian kroners, and I don't know what it is in CHK. I can Google things, though.
Googling Yeah, it's a Corona, slightly different spelling.
A Corona? Like a beer?
Yeah, why not? Works out to about $6. Thanks so much, buddy. Let's see, Bald Guy. What's up, Bald Guy? A secret handshake. Secret Bald Guy phrase that only other bald guys know. Thanks for the €5. They say, let's say SpaceX can finally send a crew to Mars and you're invited. Would you go? It's weird to think about, isn't it? It is weird, but what's weirder is that it's actually within the realm of possibility. And to answer your question, yes, absolutely. I would go on the first Starship. I know that sounds insane, but I would absolutely go on the first Starship, crewed Starship to Mars. Crewed Starship, not cargo Starship.
Like a starship with humans on it, not like a starship that's put
Yes.
together from like bubblegum and baling wire. Not crude, but crude.
Yes, correct. How about you? I know your answer is no, but go ahead and say it yourself.
Oh no, I just no. I've got family here, and I've got the young kid and stuff like that. I have a feeling Starship's going to be going, and I wouldn't want to go anywhere until the rest of my family had been, had their own lives going and stuff like that. I would not go as long as I have a daughter that depends on me to be around for stuff. You know what I mean?
For
she
sure.
can grow up, she can get married, and then I'll be like, yeehaw, or whatever. We'll see what the wife says about that. But
But no, it's a very good point. I think probably the thing I would struggle with the most on such a journey would be loneliness, and yeah, that's the thing.
yeah, that's definitely that's a big part of the calculus for me is family and stuff like that. So y'all have fun.
For
I'll
sure.
live stream it for you. Send me
When
that
Space
video.
Fam? When Space Fam, Das? When Space Fam? Let's see. Good question though. Michael, would you go? Do you have an answer for this question? Or are you busy
No.
pulling steampunk levers?
I don't think Mars sounds very fun, and I like fun things.
I mean, it sounds fun as long as you're not trapped there, right? I mean, Earth is undeniably the best planet. We have liquid water and an atmosphere and breathable air and clouds and birds and trees. I mean, Earth is awesome. It's undeniably the best. I would only want to go to Mars if I knew that I could come back to Earth, because I absolutely wouldn't want to stay there, but I would totally go for a period of time. 2 years, something like that. Sign me up.
That would be a very like being able to come back. That would be a very compelling argument.
Yeah.
Like, oh yes.
Samuel asks, is it possible to static fire after cryo test? I assume they're asking, is it possible to static fire tonight after a cryo test, assuming the cryo test is successful? And I'm not sure from a technical standpoint if there's a minimum turnaround time of activities they need to do between a cryogenic proof test and a static fire, but I can tell you that tonight the window closes at 8 p.m., so they're already going to be pushing to the edge of the window with the current test that's going on. So there will not be a static fire tonight, but there could be a static fire as early as tomorrow if the test today, the cryogenic proof test, goes well.
Yeah, road closure is at 8 or ends at 8 p.m., right? So we're just about an hour left.
Yeah, quickly, this is the current road closures, 8 p.m. until through Thursday, and then 7 to 12 p.m. on Friday. So static fire could be tomorrow morning because it's the 7 a.m. to 12 p.m. window. Philip Whitehouse, thank you for the £5. Great to see a Vandenberg stream from Jack for the first time in a while. Well, thank you for driving all the way to California after being in Texas, Jack.
Did you bring this with you? It followed you,
yeah,
Jack.
I see what you did there. Yeah, I mean, a little bit foggy. It definitely seems to be a common thing down here in Boca Chica. Some days are really hazy and some days aren't. I'm not quite sure what the weather reason for that is. I should talk to a meteorologist, or maybe I'll ask Gene from Space Padre or something. It's really crazy the amount of knowledge all of the locals around here have. I mean, I was talking to Andy the other day, and I forget exactly what we were talking about, but he was like, "Oh yeah, the wind is doing this from the southeast, so that means the water will be over there." And so I was just like, "How do you even know this?" It's really outstanding the amount that locals just sort of have that built up knowledge from being in the area, and how little of it I have so far, even though I've spent months here. But I'll get there. Let's see. Run through some of these because we are 20 minutes behind on super chats. Thank you, everybody. Dieter, thank you for the Canadian $13.99. They say, I'm starting a new space company that substitutes steam rockets with COPVs. Those pressure tanks have achieved higher altitude than most launch companies. Yeah, somebody should tell Mad Mike, the guy that... Oh, wait, he died, didn't he? Woo, whoops. Never mind. Yes, COPVs instead of steam rockets. Steam rockets, boo. Also potentially deadly. Let's see. Dan Hornbeck, thank you for the $5. They say some grub money for Jack. Does Falcon 9 do cryo tests? Do you think they will stop doing them on Starship at some point? Also, Das, what is SN11's thrust? I think it's 3. I'm not quite sure Das even needs to answer that one, although if you want the answer from him specifically, I'm sure he can accommodate you here shortly. But first off, thank you for the grub money. And I think Falcon 9 doesn't. I mean, I don't know if we know if it does or doesn't. They test them at McGregor first, right? They do a static fire with every booster at their McGregor, Texas testing facilities. But I'm not sure if they do cryo or what as part of that flow. That's a good question.
They do static fire every Falcon 9, which obviously includes loading cryogenic propellants. So we'll see what happens to Starship, but I have a feeling that every Starship vehicle will be at least static fired before its first flight, just like we see with Falcon 9 still to this day. But I also have the camera from the production site right now, and you can actually see there's a crane on at the high bay. And I think Mary said they might be stacking part of Super Heavy at some point soon, because they have moved the thrust section into the high bay, so presumably we will see them stack the methane and liquid oxygen tanks on top of that, which would form the first Super Heavy prototypes. If we see any crane action from the high bay while we are live tonight, we will bring that to you.
Is that what that section is? It's the thrust section?
I think so. Yeah, they put that on the stand. That is the base, so I would assume so.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. But the reason I asked that is because I think the label that Mary caught on it said BN1, which would be booster number 1, booster, what was it, like double section? I think is what it was labeled, a double section. I don't think we've ever seen anything labeled a double section before, and I'm super, super curious what that is going to end up meaning, if anything.
Yeah, I'll put this full screen very quickly so you get a better look, but that is what the high bay currently looks like. And then we will go back to the testing at hand, because if something happens, we of course do not want to miss it. But you can really see that frost line on the right hand side. You can see a bit of condensation above the frost line, but on the left hand side we just see that frost line. Yep. We often see this during proof tests, where for whatever reason one side seems to get a lot more condensation on it than the other side.
Yeah, I really wonder what that double section is going to mean. Maybe the bottom of Super Heavy has to take so much weight that it will be doubled in some way, like maybe 2 rings of steel, or maybe it has to do with like the potential flared base that Super Heavy might have to accommodate all of the engines, and so like that flared base coming out of the side might be like a doubler. I don't know. I'm so curious what that label is going to end up meaning, if anything. Let's see.
For sure.
So do we think they'll stop doing cryos on Starship at any point? Yeah, totally. I mean, they don't even do the thrust rams on Starships at this point anymore. If you remember that, they used to do a cryo-proof with 3 hydraulic rams that would push up on the underside of Starship to sort of make sure it doesn't pop under load. So that's sort of one element of the testing flow, at least for Starships, that we've seen sort of go by the wayside. So definitely wouldn't discount the possibility of other parts of the testing flow that we are currently used to changing over time. Camille, thank you for the €5. They say, do you know what the fireworks were for yesterday? Greetings from the Netherlands. Elon tweeted, I think in response to Trevor, one of Trevor's photos or videos, that it was celebrating a year of great work by the SpaceX teams. And if you think about it, about a year ago is when serial number 1 was being stacked and then rolled out to the launch site for testing. I forget exactly when it was rolled out, but I do remember at the end of February last year was when serial number 1 was stacked. So going from serial number 1 a year ago to now serial number 11 on the pad, I mean, that's quite a feat. If you ask me, that warrants a fair amount of fireworks. So congrats to everybody at SpaceX who's been working their tails off to get this done. Let's see. Run the numbers. Thank you for the $4.99. They say yesterday was my birthday. Happy birthday, Jack. Oh, happy birthday, Run the Numbers. It's a good day for a birthday. Salty Meat Hook, thank you for the $2. They say, is that you, LD3? Did you play Quake Live? I don't know what that means. Quake, is that like a first-person shooter? I'm sorry, Salty, I do not get your reference. But thank you for the $2. Musical Wolves, thank you for the $2. They say Starship splashing down on corn-flavored Jello. Oh God, why? Ugh. Adam Coleman, thank you for the $4.99. They say, I think they'll send Starlink to Mars first. I mean, that's a fair guess, but at the same time, you don't need Starlink to land on Mars, and you don't need Starlink on Mars unless you have people there, I don't think, right? I mean, yeah, but fair guess. Thank you for the support there, buddy. Jordan Alsup, thank you for the new membership. Matthew Woodruff, thank you for the $3.99. Snarfer X, thank you for the $10. They say, great job as always. I think the first payload on Starship to Mars will be a Cybertruck rover to test EDL, the cargo elevator, as well as ascent. Would fit theme of meme test flights. I mean, yeah, it would fit for sure. Thank you for the $10, buddy. I mean, I can't disagree with you. Cybertruck would be a cool payload. Grace Ryan, thank you for the $20. Whole bunch of money there. Thank you so much. Matthew Woodruff, thank you for the $2.99. You said you would go when there's no cure for space blindness. Is that a thing? Is that an actual thing? I don't want to go blind. Can't confirm. CA&P Railroad, thank you for the $5. They say, as a trucker, sign me up as the driver for the semi to Mars. I mean, straight up, if I could be a space trucker, I would probably be a trucker. It sounds like a way cooler job than regular trucker to me. I mean, space trucking, I immediately think of Cowboy Bebop. Heavy Metal Queen episode. Classic. Brian Wilson, thank you for the $9.99. They say, meteorology engineering double major. Temperature gradients in the planetary boundary layer condense the plentiful water vapor that comes ashore from the Gulf. Hence, wicked fog. It is indeed wicked. We do not like the fog. Grace Ryan, thank you for the $5. Jerwa, thank you for the $25. Another one of those names that pops up all the time. They say, should celebrate a great year of NSF coverage too. Well, thank you, buddy. It has been an absolutely astounding year of growth for us here, in no small part to, thanks to everybody's support. And we're just going to keep doing better and keep getting better at what we do, and just keep trying to figure out more ways to make our broadcasts better, whether it's graphics or software or cameras or what. We hope that you understand that every little bit of support that you guys give us, we're just turning around and plowing right back into the soil of our YouTube channel. So I hope it shows, and I hope you guys keep coming back. I hope everyone stays as excited as they are right now. I mean, I did sort of wonder after serial number 8, are people going to care less when serial number 9 flies? And no. Let me tell you, it sure seems like people are just caring more and more as more people sort of tune in and figure out, oh, hey, this crazy stuff is happening down there in South Texas. So with your support, we will keep doing what we do. And it's awesome that we can even do it in the first place. So thank you. And thank you to... Go ahead.
I need to go back and refresh my memory of where we were at this time last year, but we were definitely not doing Starship streams even. So think of that now we have like 5 or 6 different cameras down there for most tests, and a year ago we didn't have a single camera. It's quite crazy.
Yep. It's been quite a growth story, and I mean, honestly, really amazing. We have 230 something thousand subscribers right now. Like that's just surreal and mind-blowing to me, and again, makes me so happy that that people care. I mean, what an audience, right? Like you guys, okay, I'm sorry. I know I'll talk about Starship in a minute here, but you guys, the audience, are what makes this possible. It would not exist if there weren't eyeballs. So if you like what you see, thank you for making it possible. It's absolutely not going to happen without your support. So thank you. All right, Starship is doing its thing. It looks like we're in the midst of a cryoproof, right? I mean, we haven't seen anything that would be indicative of an abort or a detanking or anything like that. We're just seeing that frost or condensation on the side of it grow and grow and grow, which to me just means more and more and more liquid nitrogen being pumped into the vehicle. So that is a good thing. We want to see a successful cryoproof today and hopefully a static fire as early as tomorrow.
And I just checked, Jack. I believe our first ever live stream from Boca Chica was the Starship SN4. Trying to figure out if it was a cryoproof or a wet dress rehearsal, but I think it was a wet dress rehearsal. But anyway, it was on March 2nd of 2020, so about 10 minutes ago is when we started streaming. It looks so crazy just having a tiny tank section on the pad as opposed to a full Starship.
Honestly, I kind of miss it. I mean, Starship as it is now looks way cooler, but something about just the raw tank section of Starship sitting out there getting tested was just so wild. I can't believe the first live stream we did for Starship was as late as SN4. I could have sworn we were doing it in like the 2 or 3 days, but maybe I'm just thinking of Mary's videos that we would edit. Like the daily videos, the testing recap videos. Those are a bit of a different animal than the live streams, right? So that's crazy. SN4 is how long it took us.
You can see.
Also, wait, no, it would have to be earlier than SN4 if it was March, right? Because
no, May 2nd.
Oh, May. Thank you, May. That makes sense. Wow.
Yeah, and that was a 5-hour live stream, so we got off to a fast start.
We set the precedent early that our streams are going to be marathon streams.
That was also the stream that I thought it was a good idea to have the ticker change color when we put a super chat or chat message on screen, so you could tell when it was a normal message or when it was a chat message, and it looks so terrible because the entire stream the ticker is just flashing. My terrible ideas that did not last more than one stream. Anyways, I have marked off the LOX tank Frosty on our status. It's always hard to decide when that is enough frost for the actual test, but if we go to this camera, at least on the right hand side, it looks like it has frosted up pretty good, Jack.
Yep. Yeah, I would concur with that assessment, Michael. And you gotta experiment a little bit. Sometimes you gotta do the wrong thing to know what the right thing is. So don't be so hard on yourself.
So next up, we should be looking to see the methane tank start to get frosty. Of course, we're calling them the liquid oxygen or LOX and the methane or CH4 tanks, but really for today, they're putting liquid nitrogen into the tanks. But for an actual static fire or flight test, they would use liquid oxygen as the oxidizer and methane as the fuel.
I feel like at the Flip and Burn Diner, the LOX tank Frosty and the CH4 tank Frosty would be delicious milkshakes.
That is a great idea, Jack. Okay, at the SpaceX restaurant, that needs to go on the menu immediately.
Although I don't know if Frosty is like a trademark thing from Dairy Queen, in which case Dairy Queen should just offer that at their locations in South Texas.
For sure.
This feed not sponsored by Dairy Queen. Let's see. What else we got?
Lots of super chats. Callisto says, "I'm back. What did I miss?" I mean, not a whole lot. We've just seen the frost levels increase. The tank farm is starting to pick up activity, and hopefully we'll see that methane tank get frosty, and then once that happens, that should be a complete test. So, there's a big vent. But back in the day, speaking of SN4 streams, back in the day with SN4, a cryo-proof test was super exciting because all 3 previous full-scale Starship tank sections had popped. But of course, these days, the odds of something going wrong are a lot slimmer doing a cryogenic proof test, although you never know. They're still making upgrades and making design changes, and there's always a chance that something could go wrong, but I think today's test is pretty low risk given how well the recent prototypes have done.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry.
Look at this in Mary's camera, Jack. Look at that.
Wow. Okay. Wow. That's a lot of venting. That is a lot.
Wow. That is
I don't know
crazy,
that we've.
Mary.
I don't know that we've ever seen venting with such huge volume. I mean, look at maybe it's just the wind speed or what, but that is a lot of vapor. We get
Huh.
it, Starship. You vape.
Let's see. Dougal.
Oh, sorry. What I had a thought that I didn't finish. In terms of the cryo tests being interesting or scary because the thing might pop, I wouldn't be too worried about that for SN11, like you said, but for booster number 1 or serial number 15, both of which are pretty different, I'm going to be a little bit more nervous when we get those on the stand and get ready to cryo-proof them. So, but luckily SN11 should mostly be the same as its other siblings there. So, not too worried about the cryo-proof on it, but still a necessary step that needs to get completed before we can move on to a static fire and flight.
Dougal says, Merry Born Day, Jack. Nicholas, are y'all going to put a robot near the orbital launch mount? I think that's SpaceX property, so I don't think so. Ruben says, I think the first Starship to Mars should be a tribute to the idea that started this all Mars oasis, so basically send a Starship-sized greenhouse to Mars. Ruben, the only thing I can think of that could be a problem with that is that NASA might not be a fan if you send another life form to Mars in a greenhouse. Just from a planetary protection standpoint, I think the original Mars Oasis project probably would have got SpaceX into trouble with NASA. Just the thought of sending another life form to another body that we have not. I mean, back in 2002, we did not even have much data on whether or not there was life on Mars. So maybe things have changed today now that we know. We have a better understanding of what Mars is like thanks to our rovers and whatnot, but I'm not really sure how many concerns there would be if somebody decided to try to send a greenhouse to Mars.
Yeah, from a planetary perspective standpoint, I shudder to think about like soil and all the microbes in soil and just anything, all the stuff that a greenhouse entails. So pretty tricky there, but not a bad idea, right? I mean, if I was going to bet on all the possible options for the first Starship's payload, that's not a bad bet.
Continuing to see venting on and off from Starships, that's hopefully a good sign. In fact, is that frost on the methane tank? Maybe
Yeah.
it's hard to tell where
It kind of looks like it.
where the bulkhead is, where the methane tank starts. But on that right-hand side, it looks like, is that very top of it the part of the methane tank, or is that just the very top of the liquid oxygen tank?
It's hard to say, but it does kind of look like it's almost like it's a slightly different color.
Yeah.
Like the period, the portion of a ring that is in between the two tanks. Either way, that bottom LOX tank is really frosty now.
Yep. Let's see more questions. Inquisitive Dave says, when do you think we'll start seeing starships with tiles all over the back? Well, we know not SN15 because SN15 does not have tiles on a large part of it. So it's probably going to be at least 16 or 17, I would think. But it's hard to say exactly which one. And of course, our plans change at 100 miles per hour. So even if we did know which one, that does not mean that will actually be the one that ends up with the full heat shield, because that has happened before. I think some people thought that SN15 was going to be the first to get a full heat shield,
Yeah,
and now
I
we
did.
know that it will not. So hard to say.
I definitely thought it was going to be. I mean, based on no knowledge whatsoever, just guessing, wanting it really, just wanting it to have the full heat shield. Is that a tri-vent down there on the bottom? Look at that, bottom left. Or is that
Hard to
coming from
see.
the front? It's a
Maybe
little
the
bit.
skirt vent higher up, yeah.
Either way, we have an active vehicle full of liquid nitrogen. At least the LOX tank so far appears to be. And yeah, proceeding into cryo-proof or continuing with it.
Rony Hill says, thanks for all the content. Mega Mind says, good morning from Singapore. Keep up the great streams. Steven, thank you so much. First payload, small internal methane plant. You will have 2 empty cryo tanks to work with. Yeah, I think definitely it would be cool if you could also like convert that tank section into a habitat of some sort or a pressurized volume that you could use to actually do something with for a Mars colony for the first starships, rather than having all that empty space. I mean, you already have a tank section that can support pressure. Why not try to make use of it? So I think some sort of utility, making use of the entire body of some of the first starships to land on Mars could be cool. That is a lot of condensation coming off Starship SN11 right now.
Yeah, that's a lot. Wow. This is a very visually stunning cryo-proof.
It's still trying to see if we're seeing anything on the methane tank. Let us know in chat if you think some of that frost is on the methane tank or not. I'm going to
Do your thing.
see what chat says. Chat says, Tom says yes. And then Matthew and Fern say it's not. Vicky says yes. So far, what a 50-50 split on is frost on the methane tank or not.
I mean, if Tom said yes, then it has to be true.
We're at like a, now that more chat messages are coming in, we're at like a complete 50-50 split.
I love that you're able to like actually take stock of the sentiment of chat.
James is inconclusive, and I think that's probably what I'm going to go with.
James, you are a wise person. Darth Rust, thank you for the $5. They say Hopper counted to infinity twice. Is that a reference to something? I don't get it. But either way, Darth Rust, thank you. I'm displeased with your amount of oxidation. Oh, I'm butchering Star Wars quotes. Anyways, Telesto, thank you for the $2. They say, when is Elon nuking the Mars poles? Hopefully never. Jonas, thank you for the $2.99. They ask, have the engines installed yet? Yes, there are 3 engines installed on serial number 11. And Psychotic Wolf, thank you for the $9.99. They say methane fuel cells for Martian Starship could make energy, oxygen, CO2, H2O, other hydrocarbons, etc. using a trickle of main fuel. Sure, that sounds great. Sign me up. Your opinions are interesting to me, and I would like to subscribe to your newsletter. Let's see. Liam Robbins asking, how will they load cargo into the cargo-type Starship? From the top via crane? Yeah, I mean, based on the payload user guide, which could be out of date at this point, almost certainly is, but payload user guide said the payload section will be installed sort of as its own module or something along those lines. So it could totally be the case that they stuff a nose cone full of whatever cargo and then throw that nose cone on a Starship, similar to the behavior that we've already seen, where Starship tank section is built and the nose cone goes on top of that. Sacramandi, Sukramdi, thank you for the 10 Canadian. I think I'd know how to say your name. Remember when cryoproof was a scary unknown for Starship prototypes? Thanks for all the continued coverage over the last year. Well, thanks for all the support, buddy. One of those names I see pop up a lot. So thanks for the $10 Canadian. And DYU, resurrecting the kayak stuff. What's up, Danny? When Jack in a kayak. Sometime is the answer to that. Sounds like we have another friend. Ian, is that you?
Sir, hello everybody. How's it going?
No complaints. Look at what we've got. We've got a starship with liquid nitrogen in it.
Looks like Boca Chica's given her best Vandy Fog impression.
Uh,
Okay, Ian, you have to immediately be put on the spot to answer the current controversy. Is there frost on the bottom part of the methane tank or not?
I'd say no.
Okay, Ian is on hashtag Team No. Jack, what are you on?
team question mark?
I'm going on Team No as well, just because it doesn't seem to be rising anymore. And I feel like if they had really been starting to pump liquid nitrogen into the methane tank already, we would have most likely started to see that frost line rise some more over the last 5 minutes when we started debating that question. So I think I agree with you, Ian.
Look, they're just filling the bottom tank right now.
Yeah. Which is usually how it proceeds with these tests. Often the methane tank is done after the liquid oxygen tank gets quite frosty. So we'll keep an eye on it and wait to see what happens next. But back on Mary's camera, the wind tonight is quite incredible. You can really see how far that condensation is blowing, and it's not really fading away as quickly as it normally does.
I like seeing the bands of light from the floodlights going through the fog. Gives a nice eerie feel.
It's really interesting how the different weather conditions and whatnot seem to have pretty big effects on what the visuals look like from each test to test.
And here's absolutely a very foggy and very dark visual here. I assume it's overcast at Boca Chica?
Yeah, a lot of haze and fog. And it seems to have gotten worse as the sun is set. We cannot really see the top half of Starship right now on this angle, despite all the pad lights. So I think there was definitely some haze as we were starting.
Yeah, and those are some very powerful lights out there, such as shows.
We can also, from this angle, you can really see the frost pretty well, though. And I haven't seen much change in the past 20 minutes or so. So we'll keep an eye on that. We can, a good way if you're watching this is to rewind the YouTube video on your timeline, and then fast forward and obviously try to rewind to a point where we were on the same camera, and then skip forward to live. You can see how the frost changes with an A/B test. So that is a good way to keep track how the progress is going. Is obviously this. These tests usually change kind of slowly, but Mario, thank you for the super chat. Who will enter orbit first, Starship or New Glenn? Ian, another hot question to answer.
Who will reach orbit first, Starship or New Glenn? My money is on Starship, actually. As fluid as the schedule seems to me, I think Starship has a good margin ahead of New Glenn. I wouldn't be shocked to see Starship hit orbit late this year, maybe early next.
Yeah, we've not even seen New Glenn go through any sort of propellant test or tanking test at the pad. We've not even seen the first New Glenn roll out. I mean, they're supposed to roll out a Pathfinder in the coming weeks or months, I think. We saw that. We saw some photos online of that, but
Yep.
Yeah.
And Starship is...
Yeah, and the launch date for New Glenn just slipped into 2022. I'm not sure what the odds are they hold that date, but...
Yeah, it seems very slippery, but Starship is... I'll be honest, I am surprised at how well and how quick the program is going. They have had their slip-ups, of course, with SN8, SN9, and 10 having their own landing issues, but they just keep pushing and pushing, and like, I've never seen anything like this before. It's so weird to see something like this. I don't even know how to describe it, really. It's just insane what they're pulling off here.
Yeah, and I guess the counter argument to all that with New Glenn is that Blue Origin is designing New Glenn to be a fully operational vehicle from the get-go, versus Starship is designed to be a prototype. So the Starships you're seeing now are, nowhere near the final production version, but the first New Glenn to come off the line will be a production vehicle. So there are some differences between the two, and I think it's going to be a pretty close race. But we do also have another person on commentary. Chris Gebhardt, welcome to the stream.
Hello, everyone. How's it going?
Are you team New Glenn first or team Starship to orbit first?
Oh, I think Starship gets to orbit before New Glenn. New Glenn is Q4 of next year?
Yeah,
already?
2022.
Yeah, Q4 of 2022. I would personally be... Let me put it this way. Something will have gone very wrong if Starship is not in orbit by that point.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Concur. Also, what's up, Chris?
Oh, hey, Jack. How's it going, man?
No complaints.
Hey, Chris, I think you might be a little low, so I'm adjusting your level. If you want to talk one more time, we will do an audio check live on air because we are the ultra-professional NASA spaceflight broadcast. Go ahead, Chris.
Well, there we go. So I'll just start by saying thank you all for joining us here for SN11's cryo-proof testing. I see we're at LOX part, but we haven't yet gotten to methane part yet. So I have a question about the cryo testing and how it's done. So is this cryo or just proof?
This is a cryogenic proof test, so it is a proof test using cryogenic liquid nitrogen.
There we go. Do they do cryo testing on the engines when they are doing this, or do the only time they test that is when they actually put propellant in it and bleed it down into the engines?
Good timing, because we're now seeing venting coming from the vehicle, and to me, Chris, that looks like it's coming from the normal tri-vent location. That is where
Right? Yeah.
they do. That is the engine chill bleed off line. So if that vent is open, I assume that means they are flowing LN2 through the Raptors. So I think you might be right.
Oh, there we go. There we go.
Very interesting.
Cole Logan, thank you for the $2. He says, "Who here remembers Bluebird streams?" I definitely remember the Bluebird streams, and I think the man in charge of the Bluebird streams is going to need to set it up again because there is a high demand, I think. I mean, I guess I'm sure there's a lot of people who have joined and have no idea what we were talking about because that was several months ago when we were still the very tiny NASA Spaceflight YouTube channel, but I think the larger community needs to be introduced to the Bluebird streams once the Bluebird mating season comes around again.
Oh, it's Bluebird season already.
Really?
Yeah, I had to run up and get back on the headset because I heard y'all talking about bluebirds.
Summon DOS by saying Bluebird 3 times fast.
We're going to have some Bluebird upgrades, like new cameras and stuff like that for the family of Bluebirds. If they move in, they haven't built a nest yet, but I'm watching. Back to y'all.
Yeah, fingers crossed they do move in again.
It's going to be funny when one of those robots that Chris G has been told is heading to the Cape ends up in the Bluebird birdhouse.
Really quickly, y'all, if you're wondering, like, what are you talking about bluebirds? I have a bluebird, like a bird box in my backyard. In a lot of the technology that we have sent to the field for NASA spaceflight to cover Starship and stuff like that was proofed on my back balcony looking at bluebirds. So a bunch of the transport technology and camera control and all that sort of stuff first started looking at bluebirds in my backyard, and I turned that into cameras like we see the robotic cameras deployed at the Cape. That was one of the first sort of tests of a bunch of different technologies that we use for those cameras. So that's why we're talking about bluebirds, because I needed a cool subject to point cameras at, and we did an entire season of multiple sets of bluebird eggs jumping out of the nest and all sorts of crazy liftoff, countdown, flight stuff. So anyways.
That was awesome. And as much as we joke around, like you said, it was a proving ground for the technology that we now use on our stream in terms of robots and all of that. So
absolutely.
Useful. Yep. Useful and fun and adorable.
Game as well, yeah. I've used what we learned from the Bluebird stream in a lot of different places here. So always good to have something interesting to test with, you know. So I had to run upstairs and put the headset on, but y'all had it well under control. Y'all can continue on. Sorry about that.
So now we know the strategy when DOS has gone to work on something else, and we want to get him back on the stream. We just mentioned bluebirds.
It's true.
Well, speaking of that, anyone want to ask the space shuttle question? I'm just kidding. How will SpaceX load cargo into the cargo-type Starship from the top via a crane? Yes, Liam. They plan to have a crane that descends to the payload section to the surface. And do you think it is dangerous to have the methane tank closer to the potential crew rather than the liquid oxygen tank? Any opinion on that, Chris?
In large part, the way the vehicles are built, it doesn't matter which tank is on top or on bottom, based on crewing a vehicle. If there was some kind of catastrophic failure inside of a propellant tank, it largely would not matter which would the placement of the two. So no, in that regard.
Yeah. G4R asks, what's the scoop? Do we have an imminent launch coming up? If so, approximately when? Well, not imminent as in today, but if the proof test goes well, they could do a static fire as soon as tomorrow. And that would set them up for a launch attempt early next week if everything went perfectly. But will everything go perfectly? So far with Starship testing, the answer is usually no. We have seen lots of delays and Raptor swaps with the previous tests, but of course, at some point, with practice, they will start having more success on getting things done on the first attempt. So, I don't know about you, Chris, but I expect that one of these days the Starship is going to have a pretty quick turnaround from arriving at the pad and launching.
Eventually, it will. I mean, that's definitely the goal. I mean, we've definitely seen them attempting to shorten those the time frame between when they arrive at the pad and when they actually get off the ground for their first flight. So we'll see how well they're able to do that with SN11 here. Of course, the one thing they can't control is when the investigation of the previous one will wrap up and when the FAA will give approval for a flight. So that's the one thing they really can't control in that regard of the flow.
Yeah. Ian, what is your over-under prediction for a Tuesday flight test a Tuesday of next week flight test?
I give it a 50% shot maximum.
That's what I love about Ian. He's like a firm maybe. But to be fair, that's what I give too. A firm maybe.
He's taking sides, so I'll take a nice firm middle shot at maybe. I don't know.
Love it.
Predicting Starship test flights is a dangerous territory, as another Chris found out. Musical Wolves, thank you for the $5. Is the Tesla battery in Starship secured so it won't fall on the tank during a hard landing? I mean, it's secured about as well as it can be, but if the tank blows up, the battery will go flying. And I think we have seen the battery come down on some previous anomalies and be burning for quite a while. So, I mean, I don't think it's that big of a concern, though.
And with the whole vehicle going up in flames, I think a little battery is the least of the concern.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so it would be kind of like in an operational ship like this. It would be, I mean, it would be bolted on there and secured enough to survive a hard landing like that, just not an explosion on a tank failure like that, or a RUD on a tank failure like that.
Yeah. Anthony, thank you for the very generous $50 super chat. We appreciate that support a lot. And you will help cover our very expensive data plans that are required for us to be able to stream with all these cameras. So we really appreciate your support. It helps us out a lot. Apricot says, if cargo is being put into Starship by the crane, how would the payload stay clean and sterile?
Yeah, that's a good question. There are different ways that they could do this. You know, not every single payload is going to have the cleanliness requirements of everything else. So it'll come down to that. But I mean, they could build some type of, you know, rotatable enclosure that could go over Starship to help protect. In that regard, the payload itself could be environmentally wrapped when it is delivered and lifted, and they could get it secured in there and, you know, potentially close up. They could have different access hatches, so they could potentially get in there and unwrap it after it's in placed inside the nose cone. There are a variety of ways they can do that. It's not a huge impediment, but it will require different coordination and different agencies getting used to that shift in how a payload might be integrated, or how payloads will have to be integrated to Starship if it is going to fly customer satellites. So definitely something to watch for, but not a deal breaker.
I may add on something there. I'm thinking
Yeah.
I could see something either they take off the nose cone of the Starship altogether and have a sort of, maybe make it like more simplified attachment rather than welding, maybe have heavy duty bolts on there similar to how Falcon 9 is bolted together. You can process the nose cone and near the build site, put the payload in there, roll it out and attach it to the top of the Starship. I'm thinking either that or maybe they could do a shuttle style thing with some sort of service structure that rolls up and installs the payload. But I think the most realistic way, in my opinion, would be the attachable nose cone. And you put the payload in at the build site in a clean room. So it's all sealed up when you get to the launch pad.
Mike says, would a solid rocket motor on the bottom of Starship be pushed away in the event of an abort? It would give Raptors time to spool up. I think that's just... that adds some complexity. Like, you have to consider how would the plume, like where would the plume go on from that motor? You've already got Raptors at the bottom, so I don't really know where on the bottom of Starship you would put that. It kind of adds a lot of complexity.
It would add a lot of mass too, and really be a hit to the performance of what the initial haul to orbit could be. I understand the spirit of the question. I think in terms of how they're thinking the Starship system would work is, of course, you want to make it as reliable as possible so that these types of scenarios in an abort are rare, or you're suffering a type of failure where it's like a single engine or a dual engine out scenario on the Super Heavy booster, where you continue on to orbit. But yeah, I mean, in terms of how the system could work, depending on what your issue was on the first stage booster that would cause the abort, I mean, you could still initiate a separation sequence and a shutdown sequence and get Starship away, depending on what part of the problem would be on that first stage. But this is a very different system, and I know we've talked quite extensively about what we think in terms of the abort structure and the fact that this is a very different vehicle. And if we're serious about what this is and what we want to use it for, not just in the cargo realm, but in the human transportation realm, the question needs to evolve away from how would it abort if needed to, getting the system safe enough to the point where you accept the risk of that type of catastrophic failure, just like you do anytime you buy a ticket to get onto a plane to travel somewhere. So it's an interesting question, and it is an interesting element to the design for how they will handle that. But a solid booster in that case wouldn't be the way that they would go.
And we have just had a new video released, actually, as we've been streaming. There's been more work done on Super Heavy BN1, which is the first booster prototype for the Starship program. There are now 3 sections in the high bay, so it's very exciting to see what's going on there, as well as more work around the build site. So all around, we have a new exciting video coming out. You can watch it now, watch it at the end of the stream, and we'll link it up in chat.
Yeah, you can see that crane right now in the high bay. That is going to be stacking one of the Super Heavy booster sections. That was going to be stacking a piece of tank section on top of a section, I think the thrust section that Mary spotted going into the high bay, or in the high bay in today's video. So lots of progress on Super Heavy, and make sure to check out Mary's daily videos as always, because this stuff moves at 100 miles per hour. And I found if I miss one daily video, I'm out of the loop.
I can relate. And,
Yes.
and
So
in
much so.
that, actually, there's a question here from Clint asking, BN1 fully stacked, do you think we'll see that by the end of the month? That's a good question. I think it could be possible, to be honest, because it seems like they have every section ready to go in the high bay. They just need to put it together, which obviously is easier said than done. But I think there's a decent chance we could see BN1 fully stacked or almost fully stacked by the end of this month. Anyone else think any differently?
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that one. I mean, there's still, what, 20 days left in the month? It could be at the pad in 20 days for all we know. Yeah, no, I think there's a good chance that I agree with you. Good chance it's fully stacked by the end of the month. Wouldn't say it will have flown, but definitely stacked. Maybe at the pad, but not flown. Is what I would go with there.
And yes, that'll be very interesting to see because Super Heavy is about 1.5 times as tall as a Starship.
Yeah.
So that's gonna be, we're gonna need to make like our own custom extreme fisheye lens just to be able to see it.
It really is. I mean, what's fascinating about it is it's 70 meters tall, based on what SpaceX has said and everything on their website, and 70 meters is the full height of a complete Falcon 9, complete with payload fairing. So just the first stage of Super Heavy of Starship is the entire height of Starship or of Falcon 9, and just a lot wider. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's insane. It's just the booster being that tall, and then you complete the whole thing, and it's taller than the Saturn V, which is just it's going to be incredible to see. I don't even know how we're going to get that whole thing in frame. Vertical cameras when, but like.
I know, right? All of our technology forced us to go landscape, and then SpaceX builds a portrait rocket.
All right, no, this is the point where I jump back in as the film nerd, and I'm like, 16.9. All right, it took us a huge chunk of my life, and I'm sure your guys' too, to switch from 4:3 standard definition framed TVs to 16.9, and for years and years, you're either watching a 16.9 or widescreen image on a 4:3 box, and you have letterboxing on the top and bottom, or you're watching a 4:3 thing on a 16.9 box, and you have letterboxing on the side. I mean, come on, we were finally in the promised land of one aspect ratio, and then phones had to happen, and portrait had to become a thing. Like, God, get that portrait video out of here.
I will agree. Portrait mode, seeing it on a desktop Twitter, desktop anything, is just like, oh, so much wasted space.
It's so awful. I mean, it makes sense for the phone. I get it. I shoot things in portrait for Instagram stories and for Facebook fleets, and oh God, I sound like an old person. But yeah, just come on. No. Even as a joke, no.
We hear you, Jack. We hear you.
But to your point, it is going to be absolutely astounding when Super Heavy is the thing, and it will be a challenge to shoot, given its insane size. But not vertically.
Well, it's good that we have Jack here to keep us in check.
Yes, indeed. Before us youngins go off talking about different aspect ratio.
A question from Scott that I had Danny and our back channel research for me, because I admit I did not know myself, but the exact date for the FAA streamlined regulations is March 21st for that going into effect. That was delayed from March 10th. So the FAA is kind of revamping their launch and re-entry requirements to get approval for that. So that may be something that helps SpaceX get easier FAA approval in the future, and those new regulations go into effect March 21st. So looking forward to seeing how that impacts the launch industry.
And that will be great for the reusable market in the future to have easier applications for flight. It'll make it a lot quicker to go from launch to land to relaunch. So it's going to make it even more exciting, and I can't wait to see a reflight of Starship. I can see Starship beating Falcon 9 very quickly in terms of turnaround time.
Rocket Man with a super chat. Other rockets have escape systems for crew members. Why has Starship not designed a breakaway nose cone?
Well, the reason for that is, at least the current understanding is that SpaceX is trying to design Starship to be safe enough to not require a launch escape system. Now, whether or not they achieve that, that's a different story, but that's their current going right now. And adding a launch escape system would be extra mass, extra volume, all of which would cut away from your mass to orbit and the amount of volume available for payloads and for crew members and for just general cargo. So they're going to do, it seems like they're going to be doing a rapid test program where they'll fly hundreds of times before putting crew on to get a large amount of flights under their belt to make sure Starship's as safe as possible. But it doesn't seem like they'll be going with a sort of launch abort system, at least operationally.
No, and to be fair, too, it becomes one of those things with launch abort systems that once you move beyond a small-ish capsule design, right, like Dragon and Orion and Starliner and Soyuz, once you get large vehicles like this, it really becomes untenable to have portions of them that break away in the event that an abort is needed. The shuttle didn't have it. They looked after Challenger at what it would take to have a breakaway crew module, something that could, be propulsed away from a vehicle if they were ever in a Challenger-esque situation again. And what they basically wound to was it's not just impractical because of how the vehicle had been built. It would have required such a radical redesign that would have reduced the usable payload volume on your vehicle that it was starting to negate the whole reason that your vehicle existed in the first place. And I'm gonna keep pointing this out because it is a huge difference in how we think of rocketry versus how we think of other forms of travel. But are you asking that same question when you get on a Southwest flight or a Delta flight or of whatever airlines are popular in the countries that you're watching from? Do you demand your seat have a parachute? Do you demand that your seat have an ejection system? Right? You don't. You accept the risk that something could go wrong when you buy the ticket and when you step inside of it. And that's what they're trying to do with Starship, and that's the huge paradigm shift that they're going for here.
Yep, and as Nunya Business, great username by the way, but as Nunya Business said, or asked, does a 737 have parachutes? And you pretty much answered this
there we
already,
go.
Chris.
Yep.
But yeah, they're going for a similar an airline like reusability. Elon talks about it all the time. Do you throw away a plane after every launch? He said it so many times that a lot of people in the space community are sick of hearing it. So they want to get to a point with rockets where we are with planes right now, where you just refuel it and you're good to go with little inspections here and there. But it's going to take a lot of testing to get there, a lot of test flights to get there, to make sure everything works perfectly. We didn't go from the Wright Flyer to a 787 immediately. So it's going to be a good bit of time before we get a fully crew-rated Starship. And I mean, I'm not saying decades, but it's going to be a few years, at least in my opinion, until we see a crew-rated Starship. And that'll be after several hundred launches, a few hundred launches.
Craig with a super generous $100 super chat. Craig, you just went a long way towards paying off the data on the stream, so I appreciate your support very much. And anyone supporting the stream via super chats, we very much appreciate, or via the store or via the membership program, whatever. It really helps, and we could definitely not do the stream without everyone's support. So thank you so much, and we will continue to invest in more equipment. I can guarantee you that we have more projects in the works to improve our coverage. And the list of projects that DOS is going only gets longer; it does not get shorter.
Yeah, seriously, thank you so much, Craig. And it's not just DOS either. There's the things I wish I could tell you guys about, but You'll just have to wait and see all the cool stuff we're working on.
Steven, okay, I think they're asking if New Glenn or Starship, which will be first to fly a paying customer. They say for which first for a paying customer. I think they mean fly a paying customer because both have already secured paid launch contracts.
Now, that is a very good question, actually.
Yeah, that is tougher
That
than
is very tough.
than the which will fly first, because of course we expect the first Starship orbital flights to have Starlink, and I mean Starlink is SpaceX, so it's not really a customer.
Yep. I could see Starship flying with paying customers around maybe spring next year for minor ride shares, but probably summer more likely, especially for larger payloads. But yeah, I think I don't know. I'd say maybe New Glenn, to be honest.
It also depends on how you define paying customer. If you define paying customer as a high school that paid $200 to have their CubeSat ride on Starship, that's different than, I think what the question is getting at is, like a dedicated payload or at least a multi-million-dollar payload. So if we limit it to strictly, large communication satellites or a dedicated ride, that is definitely a tough question. I could see New Glenn being first.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I'm surprised you said next year, Ian. I mean, I was going to say like 2024, 2025. Maybe that's way too late, but yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see how that plays out.
I think that's very late in my opinion. I could see them at least having some ride shares next year, maybe some CubeSats, maybe a paying like actual customer, like a geostationary satellite. I know they've had interest from recurring SpaceX customers. I believe Turksat was one of them, about flying on a Starship. I think it was 2022 they were talking about, or 2023 maybe. But it depends on a lot of things, and especially for Turksat, because they're geostationary, it depends a lot on refueling capabilities. So I actually agree with you that it could be 2023, or it could be later.
Well, yes. Sorry. So so two things there, because I've been sitting here going, I don't know how to answer this question, because it does come down to who you consider to be a paying customer, or not. And I think part of this is Blue Origin has started to be a little more vocal about the fact that they do have contracts for New Glenn, right? They're not blasting out every single contract that they've got, but they're being a little more upfront with the fact that they have them. ULA kind of came out of nowhere with Vulcan, and when Tori was like, "Oh yeah, over 30 launch contracts for Vulcan," and it's like, "Whoa, what?" I would be shocked if Starship didn't have those already. That SpaceX just isn't ready to talk about. But I have a feeling there are already customers lined up, and it's just sort of the open-ended question of when the system will actually be ready for those types of missions. But I would point out too, to your question, Ian, or to your comment, Ian, about Turksat 5B. Well, not 5B. That's on a Falcon later this year, but others in the Turksat family that are coming after that, potentially being viable options. But you said, but those are geostationary missions. There's nothing that would necessarily preclude the Starship from opening with a geostationary transfer orbit capability, as they're demonstrating orbital refueling to potentially do larger missions. And potentially, if we're talking about a 6-ton satellite, 8-ton satellite, maybe a fully fueled Starship could do that to geo and back, recovering in a recoverable fashion if it's light enough, without having the need for orbital refueling. So I don't know. It's fascinating, but I don't know if I'm going to venture a guess on a year, actually.
That sounds like a safe bet to me.
See an RCS thruster fire at the bottom of Starship right there.
I was gonna ask if that's what that was. Yeah.
We just heard it on our ambient audio too.
Ah, nice.
It was quite loud, whatever it was.
Yeah, and we're at 8:04, 8:05 now, local.
Yep, did you hear that? There's another one right there. not sure I saw it, but it could have been on the nose cone, which is kind of up in the vast darkness right now.
So I guess.
Oh, there's
look at
another one
that.
right there.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
I actually do not know, so I'm asking this question. What is the bottom RCS used for? Is that used for during the flip? Or during the, once it reaches apogee?
Yeah, so same as the forward, RCS is used for attitude control. That's what the aft is used for. You just balance it. Basically, you have some thrusters in the aft, some thrusters in the fore toward the nose, and that's what you would use in orbit too for your reorientation maneuvers as well. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Let's see. And if you're just joining us, I guess we should do a quick recap of where we are. We just saw some RCS thruster firings to test out that system on Starship SN11, but we have seen that liquid oxygen tank kind of hold that frost line for quite a while now. It does look like at the very top there's a little bit of decreasing frost over the past 10 minutes or so, but we do expect the methane tank to get frosty in a bit. This is usually how the proof tests go. Do the LOX tank first, and then the methane tank comes second. So we'll keep an eye on that, but still expecting to see that methane tank get frosty.
I mean, the road closure ended at 8, although we've seen them go longer than the posted times before. But worth mentioning that it is 8:06 local.
And you're continuing to see and hear the RCS firings.
Very interesting to watch as SN11 comes to life, sort of here. And there's another one.
Yeah.
And we got a super chat here from Greg asking, where are the flight computers physically located on Starship? So thank you for the donation, Greg. I believe that the flight computers are located in the engine bay. Is that correct?
Yeah,
I don't
they're like,
know.
that's a good question.
I believe we've seen I know the Tesla battery pack is up on the forward dome, but I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure that the flight computers are in the engine bay because I don't think I've ever seen them up on top of the forward dome before.
I always thought they were up there with the Tesla battery, like a big avionics package, but I could be wrong.
I will check Mary's pictures real quickly, actually, because now I'm very interested.
Yeah, I feel like
Yeah. So
like maybe once we've seen a photo that was like something forward avionics or something like that. I'm not, but I don't remember when, and I could be I mean, eyewitness testimony is notoriously fallible.
Thinking about it, it would make more sense to me that they're up with the batteries, because it would be weird to put your flight computers in what is essentially the inner stage, the skirt area on the bottom of Starship where your engines are, given the flames and recirculation and everything
And vibration.
and vibration. Yeah, you would want to protect that flight computer a little bit more in its placement. So and this is just me talking off of a logic stream here. Like, it would make sense that they would be somewhere else other than the engine bay. Yeah.
And we have another question here from Steven asking, do we know if Elon's thinking of a set of cycles for Mars once the infrastructure planter is going? So I believe they're asking, will we have a constant flow of starships heading to Mars? So I believe the answer to that is yes, very much. But I don't think we'll see an immediate just breaking of the dam of starships heading to Mars. I think it'll be slow at first, mostly cargo with a little bit of people to sort of build the things, but the cargo for fuel production for the solar farm. Solar is very important because without power, you can't do much, like in any part of society, let alone on another planet. So I think that will be one of the main things, to get a large solar farm going, fuel production, life support, habitats, all of that. And I believe Elon's even initially said that the first habitats will be the starships that land there. So there's not even going to be room to house thousands of people from the get-go. So I think it'll be mid 2030s, maybe like early 2030s, maybe, to get a large amount of people heading to Mars in mass. But that is a very interesting question, and that'll be cool to see their infrastructure plans develop as Starship gets closer and closer to deploying to Mars. And a question here from Daniel saying, Jack should attend my Pimp Your Portrait photo webinar. I don't think Jack's going to be very happy hearing that. So, but thank you very much for the donation.
Yeah, there you
Portrait
go.
mode photos. Yeah.
Well, yeah, well, portrait video is really the bad one, but yeah, I'll give a webinar on it. It'll be great. Everyone will love it.
And am I crazy, or is there a small frost ring forming on the methane tank?
Looks like it,
Very
yeah. Looks like
thin
it's
frost
starting
line.
to grow finally.
Yeah.
Yep, it does look like it. Skipping back a few minutes, looks like something's starting.
So hopefully we will see that happen. So far, all indications are that this is going perfectly to plan, although of course we have no official information from SpaceX on this test.
And a question here from Rusty with a $10 super chat. Thank you very much. Asking what is going to happen to 7.2. So for those who are unaware, SN7.2 is a very short tank section of a Starship. It's a test article using 3mm stainless steel rolls instead of 4mm. And by lowering the thickness of the steel, they can save about 10 to 20 tons actually of mass across all of Starship. So SN7.2 is just a small test article to try out the new steel. So we have seen one cryogenic test on SN7.2. I believe that was about a month ago. Is that correct?
It
was-
Yeah,
about
something
a
like
month
that.
ago, yeah.
There's two.
Wow.
Oh, okay. And I remember on the last one there was a burst or as a slight rupture that they have repaired or they are in the process of repairing. But SN7.2 is just sitting out there at the pad right now. It is no longer hooked up to the liquid nitrogen lines, but that's just a relatively simple task of running a hose. But it seems like
Are those
SN7.2
more?
should.
Hang
Yeah,
on.
more
I think we're getting some more thruster firings.
Yep.
Let's listen in. Neat.
That's a cool sound. I love how you can hear 1, 2, 3, 4 on like the bottom first, then the top. That's interesting to see the little test pattern there.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I'd love that this super chatter's name is Rusty Shackelford. That's a King of the Hill reference. Pocket sand.
I have not seen King of the Hill, although I would like to see it. And so, yeah, back to what I was saying about SN7.2. So it is still at the pad. It's still being worked on, so it seems like they still care about it. So I guess we'll just have to wait over the next few days, few weeks, see how it fits in between SN11, BN1, orbital site construction, all that fun stuff. It's always a fun time down at Boca Chica.
That it is. Oh, there's another question here from Keith, who's asking. We're talking about the flight computers for Starship, and Keith was asking, are there Raptor computers as well as the flight computers? Probably more than a few different types of computers. And this is a great question because, yeah, there are different types of computers on board Starship. So Starship has its overall flight computers, which would handle all the commanding down to like start the end, like sending the commands from the vehicle to say, okay, engines, we need you to start. But then there are computers on each of the individual engines that are monitoring and commanding each individual engine, responding to those commands from the flight computers, and it's all an intricate, web of communication for how the different computers talk to one another on the vehicle. So yes, you are right. There are individual computers on the Raptors as well.
Yep, and that's when you hear sometimes in the countdown, I believe it was with SN9, SN10, there was a Raptor abort called, and that's when one of the Raptor computers says, okay, there's a problem here with my engine, tells the flight computer, and the flight computer stops everything immediately. So they sort of all communicate with each other, the Raptors and the flight computer. The flight computer just talks to the Raptor computer rather than talking to the entire Raptor itself, I believe.
Yeah. And usually in there you have main computers, you have backup computers, you have redundancy so that if one goes down, you've got another one to pick up, exactly where you've left off, and you don't lose a critical system in that regard as well. And there's usually a unifying master program that's watching over everything too. That's watching how they're all talking to one another and making sure it's all working as it should. Sort of like in some vehicles, that's literally called the master events controller. As well. So yeah.
Yeah, the robots are taking all the jobs.
Yeah, right.
Brandon, thank you for this super generous $50 super chat. Brandon says, "You guys rock. Thank you and Mary for all you guys do. We appreciate your support, Brandon." And then Steven says, "Do we know if Elon is thinking about a set of cyclers from Mars once infrastructure is in place on the planet?"
Cyclers, okay. So I believe he's talking about Aldrin cyclers, which is a sort of theoretical, or not theoretical, a proposed system where you have ships in a sort of elliptical orbit between Earth and Mars. And what that means is that the lowest point of the orbit is at the exact same altitude as Earth's orbit, and the highest point of the orbit is at the exact altitude of Mars's orbit. So it sort of cycles between both planets. And when the time is right, you could pick up something from Earth, attach it to one of the spacecraft in the cycler, use that spacecraft as a sort of hub, and then drop your cargo or people off at Mars. So that was proposed, I believe, by Buzz Aldrin himself, actually. And I don't believe that they're considering cyclers. I think they're just sending Starship by itself, or a whole what's it called? A whole fleet of starships to Mars at once, rather than having a sort of cycler, at least near term.
I propose a totally serious and not jokey rename for cyclers to be called partiers. I think that would sell better with the public.
Called what? Say that again?
Partiers, like an Aldrin partier. I don't know. It's stupid. It's a stupid joke. Moving on.
Oh no! Sorry. Your audio hiccuped. I literally didn't hear the word that you said.
Okay. Okay. My bad.
And a question here. Oh, sorry, Chris.
Oh, go ahead, Ian. Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to grab a question here from Vina. I apologize if I can't pronounce that correctly. Asking, where's Starship SN12, 13, and 14? So they are no longer with us. Starship SN12 was assembled, the sections were fully assembled, but it was scrapped so they can move ahead quicker to SN15, which Elon said SN15 has certain upgrades to make it a sort of a better system overall. So SN12 was scrapped when it was just in sections. SN13 and 14 had some sections built, and those were scrapped as well. So we're going straight from SN11 to SN15.
This is completely speculative, but I sort of wonder if they intended to have sort of one Starship a month. And between SN1 this time last year, maybe they were hoping to be around SN12 now, but because of the FAA and weather and just general schedule slips, they have only gotten to 11 now, and what they could have learned from 12, 13, and 14 is essentially obsolete, and so they're no longer needed. I mean, the latter part of that is not, less speculation, but I just think, 12 months, 12 starships. We did less than one Starship a month in terms of testing, so we no longer needed 12, 13, and 14, and we can advance to the next batch of vehicles and the next phase of testing. I almost wonder if a similar thing will happen with, some future chunk of them. Maybe we'll skip, 25 to 30, and we'll go straight from 24 to 30 or something like that, just guessing. Just because clearly the number is less meaningful and not tied directly to the order in which it rolls out to the pad, right? Just because we don't see all the parts of them and whatnot doesn't mean they're not getting built. So they can be, if they're getting built, then they can be scrapped.
Yeah.
Yep, and
Oh,
yeah, I
oh,
think
do you
as we
hear that? I think there's like
That was cool.
some venting or something. It's like, whoo.
Yeah.
It's like a ghost starship sound effect. Woo.
Which is perfect for like the ghostly black and white image that we have right now.
Yeah,
Ghost
concur.
and But Jack, to add on to what you were saying, I believe another reason, or sort of elaborating, I guess, on what you were saying, I think a more continued reason is them, like you said, flying less than they expected, but also a sort of, I guess, quote unquote, problem of developing and improving the system faster than they had expected, so they can get upgrades in on later starships. And they really want to fly those upgrades, so they're skipping the ones without those upgrades to fly the ones with the upgrades, because those would be easier and they'll get more data out of those with the upgrades. So I think you did have a good point there of being slower than expected, but also innovating faster than expected. And also, SpaceX is no stranger to abandoning things that they've already started building, already have built, in favor of something newer, such as like the Falcon 1E or the Merlin 1B for those hardcore older SpaceX fans. Also, the Falcon 5, skipping architectures that could have worked, but for something that would have overall been better long term.
Shout out to Falcon Air.
Oh, Falcon Air. Shout out to Red Dragon.
Shout out to Gray Dragon.
That frost line on the CH4 tank is continuing to rise. Slowly, but it is rising, so that is a good sign. We should expect
Interesting that the
to-
frost on the LOX tank seems to have receded a little bit.
I was going to ask about that. Are they just letting it sort of boil off in the LOX tank while
That's a
maintaining
good question.
pressures?
Yeah, I mean
I'm
they
not-
definitely need pressure in the bottom tank, right? If the top tank is going to be filled, otherwise you get an SN3 type situation,
Right.
which
Yeah.
is no good. So surely there's at least something in that LOX tank, but yeah, curious. I wonder. I'm very curious as to what's going on there.
That is something we usually see with these proof tests, but as to why, I'm not sure.
Gotcha.
And the question, I know.
Go for it, Ian.
Why did SpaceX try to put a nose cone and 3 engines on Starhopper when it only went to 150 meters? That's a good question and a nice little throwback there. So for those who are unaware, Starhopper, you can see, you can't really see, it's there on the left-hand side of the screen with the floodlights on it. But Starhopper was the original Starship prototype, and it was originally built with a mock-up nose cone. Honestly, just sort of a thin truss with a sort of a foil wrapping around it, just for display purposes, essentially. And it was also originally built with 3 engine mounts on it for Raptors. Starhopper was originally going to.
Yes, so I think we may have lost Ian there for a little bit. He kind of went completely silent there on us. Ian, there's a message for you in the back channel regarding that, by the way, just in case you can hear us on there. But so Starhopper, like we were just talking about, really with the SN flight numbers. Jack, you were saying about how like they just kind of got ahead of them, right? Like as the normal delays and testing regimes come up.
Yep.
Sometimes you can get ahead of yourself, and that's kind of what happened with Starhopper, if memory serves. They had a whole sequence of tests that they were going to do, and then the designs of the starships and the Raptors just kind of kept evolving, and they realized that they didn't really need Starhopper for the intense profile that they were going to originally test it at. But there were still other things they could use it for, so they just kind of repurposed it after that. I'm sure I'm blanking on some specifics there, Jack. Jack or Michael, if you remember any of them.
Yeah, I mean, they did a photo op with the nose cone, so I think my opinion is that Starhopper's nose cone is probably more for looks. I think they wanted a cool, inspiring photo to get people excited about the program, and then, I mean, there's obviously some benefit of getting experience with building stainless steel nose cones. I don't think there was a waste to do it, but I'm not sure it really had a purpose in terms of flight testing.
Yeah, gotcha.
Getting an audio check here. How do I sound?
Keep talking. Maybe
Yeah.
ask a question. We'll see how you sound.
All right. How's it all going? Do I sound any better here?
You're still coming in slightly
Yeah.
garbled for some reason.
Weird. I will reconnect.
Yeah, and while we do that, there's another question here from Matt, who is asking, I haven't heard much about Venus gravity assist trajectories for Mars, maybe for cargo. Would this require less delta V or allow launches between the Mars interplanetary windows? That is an absolutely fantastic question. Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. The generalized answer to your question, or the best answer to your question, is the reason you haven't heard about Venus gravity assist trajectories for Mars is because they're really not the most energy efficient trajectories we can take. It actually takes quite a bit of delta V to slow yourself down so you start falling inward into the solar system. It actually takes a lot less delta V to eject yourself out of the solar system than it does to try to get yourself closer to the sun, which is why we see a lot of missions like the European Space Agency's Solar Probe and NASA's Parker Solar Probe use multiple Venus gravity assists to slow down to get themselves closer to the sun. Now, it is true that using Venus for some of the outer planetary trajectories, like getting yourself outward to Jupiter and to Saturn, depending on where Earth is in its orbit and the energy that you need versus the mass of your spacecraft, that Venus could be a little bit helpful there. But for Mars, it's actually just easiest and simplest to aim at it and go from an Earth perspective. Not that it couldn't be done, but from an efficiency perspective, it's easier to just aim at the planet and go. Yeah.
Look at
Sorry,
that
Mike.
frost continuing to climb there on the.
Yeah.
So here's a good question from Patrick from a little while ago for those who are new to these cryoproofing tests. How long do these take on average? Now, he was asking this back when there was only 30 minutes left in the window. Obviously, we've blown past the end of that window and all is fine and they're still testing. But about how long do these cryoproofs take from our experience?
A couple of hours usually. We're 2 hours and 7 minutes into our stream. I think this started maybe 10 or 20 minutes before we went live. So about 2.5 hours into the test in total. And we are pretty far into the test. We clearly see the frost rising on the methane tank. And usually once that happens, it's over pretty quick. So I would guess maybe 30 more minutes until they start detanking. Or they will start detanking within 30 minutes, I should say. I'm not going to try to be that precise and say exactly in 30 minutes they will be detanking. But I don't think there's going to be too much longer before we see that frost start to go down.
Adrian,
Gotcha.
if you are listening, spreadsheet us up some cryoproof data.
so that's kind of what I was going to get at there for a question there. Is we see the frost on the liquid oxygen tank there at the bottom much more pronounced than it is on the methane tank up top. Do they not fill the methane tank completely? Do they
will.
fill the liquid oxygen? Oh, they will. So it just goes very quickly from here on out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think they generally will.
Gotcha.
We continue to see venting from that methane tank. So as they continue to load liquid nitrogen, and we often see them continue venting to maintain pressure at a certain. I'm not sure exactly what bar they are trying to reach during this proof test, but we often see that maintenance vent.
So excellent. So Michael Paddington with a good follow-up question. I love follow-up questions. So he has a good follow-up question saying, what about a Venus flyby to facilitate an Earth return from Mars to shorten the wait time from Mars? That is actually where a Venus encounter or dipping in toward the orbital distance of Venus could be helpful in getting back from Mars quicker if you needed to. We're all very familiar with the 26-month interplanetary window to get something from Earth to Mars. It's a little bit more tricky to get back, but you can mitigate that by swinging inward a little bit more than Earth is in the solar system in terms of distance to get back. So yes, Venus could be instrumental in getting back to Earth. Not that efficient for getting there, though, when we're talking about Mars. But great follow-up question. I love those.
And I'm continuing to do A/B tests to see how the frost is changing. The frost on the liquid oxygen tank continues to go down, but they're still adding more LN2 into the methane tank, it looks like. So, see how long this takes. But, like Jack said, we should see the methane tank get fairly frosty here.
Excellent, excellent.
John Hardy, thank you for the super chat. How close are we to beginning construction on an O'Neill cylinder? What is NASA going to waste their budget on after the SLS program is finished? Well, that's a kind of pointed question, but Chris, you want to take a stab at it?
Yeah,
Sure,
leading
why-
the witness. Leading
Yeah,
the witness.
Yeah, sure. Why not? Okay, so flat out to answer the question that's been asked. I'll take the second one first, and then I'm going to punt the first one back to all of you. What is NASA going to use their budget for after the SLS program is finished? Asked John. Doubtful the SLS program is going anywhere anytime soon, right? If we were really in a situation where we're talking about SLS as the vehicle going away, there are a few steps that we would see, some signs. Not necessarily seeing all of those. A big one would be, what do you do with Orion? I don't think they have a huge appetite to get rid of the Orion vehicle. I don't really think anyone has an appetite to get rid of Orion. It does serve its purpose in the larger Artemis program. Is Orion shackled to SLS? Yes, it is. Right now, Orion could be made to launch on another vehicle if needed. But to flat out answer the question of what would NASA spend their budget on if the SLS program was finished, NASA would not get the budget for SLS. This isn't. I mean, I know we love to talk about like, oh, what could NASA do with that billions of dollars on SLS? They wouldn't have gotten it to begin with, and Congress isn't going to go, oh, we're canceling this big rocket program that was a jobs program in Utah and Alabama and in Louisiana and in other states, right? Congress and senators and our Congress people are not going to say, oh, we're canceling that multi-billion-dollar program. Just keep that money for science. That's not how it's going to work, unfortunately, in the reality of politics here in the U.S. So what would NASA spend that money on? They'd lose it, most likely, to something else in the government.
That, for me, is the best argument in favor of SLS. Just the fact that you might as well have it around in case you need it, because, you know, Starship is unlikely to fail, I think, but I mean, it's not like a slam dunk certainty at this point. There's still a lot of development that needs to take place. So,
Yeah, I mean, you don't want any single point of failure. It's the same reason that Elon has stated that he wants humanity to go to Mars and become multiplanetary, right? Because if there's some extinction level event on Earth, you want to have a backup plan, and it's the same for rockets. You don't want to have any one rocket be the only heavy lift rocket out there, because if something goes wrong, if there needs to be an accident investigation, if the system is not launching for a period of time, 6 months, 3 months, a year, whatever, that's no good. And you want to have the ability to maintain and persist in orbit with all types of rockets. So I sure wish SLS wasn't as expensive as it is, but I'm glad that we at least have multiple heavy lift vehicles in the works.
Yeah, and like to really hammer home that point, Jack, we only need to go back just over 2 years ago to understand why single rocket programs are a bad idea. When we stopped flying the shuttle and the Soyuz became the only vehicle that could transport crew up to the International Space Station, and we were looking at 5, 6, 7 years at the time, it turned into 9, where every single time a Soyuz rocket launched, it was like holding your breath, because if something went wrong with it, and it's not just a crew vehicle, right? Soyuz does crew and cargo as well. if something went wrong with it, it could be catastrophic to the International Space Station program. And then it happened in October of 2018 when the in-flight abort on the Soyuz MS-10 crew flight happened. And those crew members were safe. The abort system worked as it should have in Soyuz and pulled that capsule away. But then we were literally facing the question of the 3 people who were up there had to come home at the end of December because that's when their Soyuz literally ran out of its on-orbit certification. And we were literally going, well, if we can't get the Soyuz back up and running and launching again in less than 2 months, we're out of luck. And we have to decrew the International Space Station. Now, thankfully, we were able to get the Soyuz back up and running, but that really hammered home the point of why you don't rely on one vehicle for everything.
Yeah. So in an optimal scenario, I think a lot of people would agree that it would make sense to instead put the SLS money towards other commercial vehicles like Starship and New Glenn and other options. But like Chris mentioned, politically that's probably not going to happen or be realistic. But you can always hope or dream.
You can, yeah. Oh, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I love the spirit of the question. Like, what could NASA do with a science budget in the billions like that? I love that. I love that question. I mean, oh my gosh, I love that question.
Unfortunately, Chris, I don't think that was the spirit of the question, given the use of the word waste.
Well,
But
it is
point
the
taken.
spirit of the question that I am choosing to reframe
Yeah, there you
the
go.
question
There you go.
as.
For
Yes.
sure.
I mean, to be fair to NASA though, it's easy now in 2020 to say, or 2021. I'm already still thinking we're in 2020, I guess. But I mean, it's always easy in hindsight to say, well, obviously SLS is not a super useful capability at this point in time because there's going to be cheaper and more affordable options available in the next few years. But in 2012, was that obvious? No. I mean, SpaceX existed, but they were not doing anywhere close to what they do now. So hindsight's always 2020, and I don't think if the SLS program had an opportunity to be created today, I don't think somebody would say it's a good idea. It's just in 2012 or in 2010 when they canceled the Constellation program, you know, it was a different world. They were starting to consider commercial options, but I don't think anybody, or at least a large number of people, did not expect the commercial companies to succeed to the degree they have. Of course, there were some big proponents of commercial spaceflight that had confidence in it, but it was not something that a large amount of people were on board with yet. And of course, now things are changing, but it's a different world now than it was when SLS was created.
Yeah, and when I think of something like SLS or any large government program, I think of like a 2-mile long freight train or like a massive oil tanker or something. Like, they can change direction, but it's going to take them a while. Or they can stop, but it's going to take them, you know, they can't stop on a dime. They can't do a U-turn on a dime. That takes a long time for a freight train to come to a stop or for an oil tanker to turn. And SLS similarly has a lot of momentum, and like Michael said, was started at a time when, or I guess modified from Constellation at a time when there were no other alternatives, and that momentum is sort of going to have to play out in terms of where SLS goes, how much it launches, what its launch rate ends up being. I mean, it could launch like 3 to 5 times and be canceled. Who knows how that's all going to work out? But that momentum, that institutional momentum, is not really something you can flip flop or like just turn off a switch on. Unfortunately.
Yeah, and I mean, it's worth pointing out, Jack, that when you were saying, like, you know, it is worth mentioning that when SLS was created in its current form, there was nothing else, and that is a very, very true statement. The shuttle program had ended a month before, and there were no contracts to build Crew Dragon and to build Starliner. I mean, there literally was nothing except for Orion and SLS at that time. I'm not sure whether it's a mark in the column of favorability or unfavorability that we're here and Dragon has flown, Starliner will fly before SLS and Orion, and here's Starship that could make it obsolete, and New Glenn is coming along that could make it obsolete. But it is an important fact to remember that when it was created, it was created because it literally needed to do all of these things. And it's the government, and it needed to adhere to certain use this, and that's how we got it.
Good old Pentagon Wars, Bradley fighting vehicle type situation.
Yeah, but I would be remiss too, because I know Chris Bergen points this out on every stream. Like, the thing that will be the biggest game changer with Starship is not its reusability, it's not its recoverability, it is the on-orbit refueling to enable 100 metric tons to any location in the solar system. That's the key performance difference between SLS as it exists right now and what Starship is proposed to be, because that 100 metric tons, if for some bizarre reason on-orbit refueling was a bust, would not stand. Right. It is based on that refueling. So nothing to say on-orbit refueling won't work, but that is still the biggest thing with the Starship design system, that if it works, at which point the question of what do you do with SLS becomes much more prudent from a money standpoint.
Yet another one of those things that I really would love an Elon update on. How do they see refueling looking? How does it work? I mean, what does a tanker Starship look like? How do they bring up a worthwhile amount of fuel? And I mean, there's just so many questions. And like you said, that on-orbit refueling is going to be absolutely key to making the whole system work. But look at that, a $5 super chat gets us going for like 20 minutes about various things.
And speaking of $5 super chat, we've got another here from Sean. Thank you very much, Sean, asking how much payload could Starship return from Mars to Earth? Same 100 tons? Thanks for your stellar coverage, pun intended. So thank you very much there, Sean. And yes, Starship is rated to return 100 tons from Mars to Earth. It's able to do this on its own without a booster because of mostly Mars's lower gravity, as well as Mars's thinner atmosphere, but atmosphere doesn't really have much to play in that game. So yes, it is rated to return around 100 tons from Mars to Earth. And I think that'll be very interesting to see what they will fit into those 100 tons. Will they have literal tons of Mars rock? I hope so, and I want a piece of it. But that would be very interesting to see if they use up that 100 tons on flights.
Now, that is predicated, though, because now to be fair, right, Starship can do single stage to orbit from Mars surface to Mars orbit like it's nothing. 1/3 gravity, much smaller planet, much lower, much thinner atmosphere, everything that you just said. But is the 100 metric ton payload return to Earth predicated on then another Starship meeting in an orbit to top off its tanks for the trans-Earth injection burn, or can it just do it all with a full load on the ground? Do we know that yet?
Now that's a great question, actually, that I do not know about. I could absolutely see actually a Starship doing in-flight refueling above Mars, just to top it off. Not even with the 100 tons, but just to have a little bit of redundancy, at least on the early missions, just to have a little extra fuel, because it won't hurt you. So I could definitely see there being the cargo Starships coming up, no payload at all, just fully fueled, and just topping off with a few flights.
Yeah, right. Anyway, that just kind of brought up, like, it's going to be fascinating because there are large elements of this system that we were still wanting those little details, like what you said, right? Like 100 tons return from Mars. That's great. With or without refueling becomes the only question, and I love that, like, that there, and can't wait to see how those parts of the system evolve over time. But for me, that's going to do it for me tonight. I'm going to go ahead and head out here, guys, so that if we have testing tomorrow, I am available for all of that. So good luck, as it looks like things might be winding down here. I know we're still seeing that frost line on the methane tank, but we're seeing that frost on the liquid oxygen tank dwindle. But hopefully a good cryo-proof test. But I will catch you all on the other side.
Thanks for joining, Chris. Good night.
All right. Night, guys.
It does look like that line on a methane tank is now decreasing, or at least holding, which I was just going back and watching our stream of the SN10 proof test, and that also did not end up with much frost on the methane tank. So, as the testing evolves, perhaps we may not see as much Frost, they might just put a tiny bit in the tank, and then pressurize the rest of the tank with the boiled off liquid with the boiled off nitrogen. So this might be about as far as it gets tonight. If we see that frost continue to decrease, I will update our timeline to detanking.
And that sounds good. And another question here from Patrick asking, what's next for SN11 after cryo test before the flight? So the next milestone after the cryo test, as long as the cryo test is a nominal test and everything's gone well with it, the next step should be a static fire test. So that should be happening in the next few days. Could be as early as tomorrow. We'll have to see. It depends on road closures and all that. And again, if this test went well. But we'll only know that when they close the road and when they clear the pad, if they're going for some sort of testing tomorrow. So as of right now, if this test goes well, the next will be the static fire test, followed by launch, hopefully a few days later, question mark, question mark. But as of right now, static fire is next with all 3 Raptor engines. And a question here from Phasix asking how reusable is TTEB. So I believe what they're referring to is TEA-TEB, which is triethyl aluminum, triethyl borane. And in non-nerd talk, that is the igniter fluid on the Falcon 9 for the Merlin engines. So Starship does not use TTEB. It uses a spark igniter, and what that is it uses a small amount of methane and a small amount of oxygen with essentially a space-grade spark plug to ignite the engines, which is a lot more reusable and a lot more, it's a lot easier to use than TTEB if you want to have rapid reuse, because you need to refill the TTEB. So TTEB is not reusable really at all. As much as you load into the vehicle, you have a certain amount of relights, where with Raptor with a spark igniter, you can keep going as long as the spark igniter works. So TTEB in the long run is not reusable. It will not be used on Starship. Spark igniters are the way of the future.
Way of the future.
I did just
Way of the future.
update our timeline to detanking. I am pretty sure that methane line is going down. Or not the methane line, but the frost line on the methane tank created by the liquid nitrogen, in case that's not confusing enough.
I was doing
Sounds good.
a Howard Hughes aviator reference, by the way.
Man, Jack knows a lot of
Way
media
of the
here.
future. Oh, and I love how I can't pronounce the user's name, but TTEB. It's actually not TEB. It's TEA space TEB. Triethyl aluminum, triethyl borane. And yeah, I just wanted to say triethyl aluminum, triethyl borane because it sounds really smart when you say that.
And agreed that it does. Nerd talk is always fun.
If you ever, I mean, it's really easy to remember what TTEB stands for. Just remember aluminum and borane, because it's triethyl, both of them. Triethyl aluminum, triethyl borane. Borates in general, I think they did like some experiments with adding boron to various jet fuels in order to mask radar signatures during the Cold War, but it's extremely toxic, if memory serves. I could be misremembering, but anytime I see the word borane, I'm like, ooh, scary. No thanks.
And interesting thing about boranes as well, or boron in general, it burns green. So in fireworks, green fireworks, there's a solid chance to use boron in there. And when the Merlin engines on the Falcon 9 ignite, what color are they? Green, the bright green flash. So it's just interesting. I'm a chemistry nerd.
I do wonder why we get the green flash when Raptors start up, because we do.
I think it's only on sometimes. That was some early engines. I don't think that happens anymore. I think that was just because of
I swear I saw it for SN10. I gotta go back and look at my photos now.
I think it is with the copper, because copper does burn green. As we could see with SN8, when it started running engine rich, it started spewing just green.
Yep. Yeah, there's multiple elements that'll burn green. I think lithium also burns green.
I think lithium's a pink color.
Fine, Mr. Chemistry Face.
All right. I see how it is. And a question here from William asking, is there a lightning tower in Boca Chica? What am I missing? Wouldn't they need one because it's made of metal and it's conductive? And good question. If this were in Florida, they would want a lightning tower. But in Texas, at least in Boca Chica, it seems like there's a lot less thunderstorms than in Florida, where in Florida you have several a week sometimes. So in Boca Chica, they're not as common, so there's not as much of a need for a lightning tower. I don't even think I've seen a thunderstorm happen in Boca Chica so far, in all the time I'm watching Starship. So as of right now, there is no lightning tower, and I would assume, since SpaceX knows what they're doing, or at least seems to know what they're doing, I would assume that they don't see the need for one and don't think they need one. On a question from Ozzy asking, was there ever going to be an SN13, referencing the unlucky 13? And yes, there was going to be. There were parts spotted for SN13, but by sheer coincidence, they decided to skip SN12, 13, and 14 and move directly to 15 because of some upgrades on SN15. So there was going to be an SN13, but now there isn't, which may be good, maybe it isn't, depends on your views on superstition. And a question here from Jordan asking, any word on if the new Canadarm will be hauled by SpaceX or NASA? And I believe the answer to that is SpaceX. And for those who are unaware, I believe they're talking about Canadarm3, which will be the robotic arm used on the Lunar Gateway, which is NASA's sort of mini space station sort of habitat around the moon that they'll use for the Artemis program. And it will have a Canadarm robotic arm on it to attach new modules to the station to move things around, just as a general utility. So I believe that will be carried up on SpaceX's Dragon XL spacecraft. It'll be carried along the side of Dragon XL, sort of hitching a ride, really. And then from there, Canadarm will maneuver itself off of Dragon XL and onto Lunar Gateway.
Yep.
All right, Ian, I found. This is terrible, like viewing for our audience, but I found a picture. I'm going to post it in our back channel. You can make of it what you will, but it clearly shows a green flash at Raptor ignition during SN10's Raptor relight.
Alrighty.
But yeah, probably just copper.
That's what I'm assuming, just little bits of copper residue, maybe things that's flaked off. Because it only seems to happen at ignition, so I'd assume just ripping off little tiny flakes. With the big pressure differential of ignition going from 1 bar to 200 to 300 bar, probably shocks, like little flakes of copper off that didn't get burned off.
Yeah, that sounds plausible to me.
And a question here from Palu Kapalooza, asking, in layman terms, what is the difference in the technology between the space shuttle and now? So that is a very loaded question. So a lot's happened.
Way better. Just way better. That's layman's
essentially
terms.
way better, way more capable. To go a little nerdy, computers have gotten a lot better, a lot faster, more capable. Wiring and other systems like that have gotten a lot simpler. Things are more digital now. Things are a lot more computer controlled. You could see even with the space shuttle, they had an upgrade to what was called the glass cockpit, where they had actual LCD or LCD, some kind of digital display screens rather than a few analog screens and a lot of dials. So it's been a lot of a difference. And you could see that especially comparing the space shuttle, even post-upgrade to Crew Dragon. Everything's a lot more simple. It's a lot more autonomous. Rocket engines have gotten simpler, more capable, more powerful, more efficient. Overall, it's just a great step in sort of improvements in spaceflight over time. So there is a lot different between the space shuttle and Starship, but in my opinion, Starship's honestly space shuttle, everything the space shuttle was going to be, at least what we're expecting Starship to be, is everything the space shuttle was supposed to be.
Yep, and Kabuza also had a super chat. Thanks, fellas. I always wondered what I would have heard at the nerd table in the high school lunchroom. I guess we'll take that as a compliment. What do you think, Ian?
I'll take that as a compliment. It's good to be a nerd.
Keith, thank you as well. Have you seen... I'm not sure which Twitter video you were asking about. Thank you for the super chat. Peter Ross, $5 Australian. Thank you as well. And Walu Kapalooza, another $5. Thank you all for the support. More questions. Do you think it's a good idea for Elon not to change Starship's landing feed? So you might have seen Elon's tweet about potentially catching Starship with the launch tower, like you're going to do potentially for Super Heavy. But then the obvious question to that is, how are you going to land on Mars? So I think they're going to need landing legs, at least on some versions of Starship. As to exactly what those landing legs look like, I don't know. Any ideas, Ian or Jack?
I agree. The whole comment on using the tower to catch Starship, catching Super Heavy, that's one thing. I have no idea what's going to happen with that. But with Starship, I don't see that as being long term a good idea, or I mean, at least short to medium term a good idea, because there are no towers on Mars or the Moon. But yeah, I think they'll need to have some sort of legs. As much as it'll hurt to develop, I think they'll need some sort to land on Mars safely.
Yeah, honestly, that comment really felt like a troll to me, or like a jokey response. But who's to say?
I hope so.
Yeah.
And a question from J-Man here asking, how does this compare to the fully built Starship? Will they be switching out the large fuel tanks for payload space when it comes to a complete launch? This is relatively close to a complete Starship. This is around the same dimensions and the same sizing and the same layout as a Starship. It is missing a lot of the things such as crew
Wow,
quarters.
sorry. Look at that venting.
Big vent.
That's-
Oh,
yeah, big
wow.
double vent. This could be the wrap up or detanking here. Sorry.
No,
Yeah, I
that's
think
good.
you're right, Jack.
Absolutely. I agree. Looks like detanking.
You can even hear it. It's like, ooh.
I'm turning it
It's
up
like
more.
a whistle.
Yeah, it
Like a
is. It's
steam whistle on a locomotive.
it's like a crazy giant steam whistle.
Ooh. Now the train nerd in me is excited.
Right?
Yep, that is absolutely a detank vent. Looks like they're wrapping up right about now.
It's like Godzilla vibes. Or like some kind of kaiju that's just like screaming.
Like a banshee.
Yeah. Yeah, that is some extremely vigorous venting there. It looks like hopefully a good cryo test. Hopefully.
I hope so. And I've noticed that the vents, at least since around SN6 or so, have gotten a lot more energetic. It seems like they're using either larger vents or opening them more fully because it's shooting out a lot of gas. Excuse me, a lot of gas right now. And Francis is saying in the chat, sounds like a hype train, and I completely agree. Choo choo.
Yeah, the hype train is sailing. Everybody get on board. That's right. I said sailing.
You do you.
Trains can sail,
Well, we put them on a big enough boat, I guess.
or big enough. I don't know. Big enough sail.
And it looks like the tanks are rapidly losing pressure now because I just skipped back about a minute or two ago.
Oh,
Looks like
yeah.
the vents are a lot less energetic now.
Yep, that's a good thing. And they're petering out as expected.
Looks like a complete depress, which is probably a good sign for an end of test.
And the vent just stopped. So we'll probably see that happen again. Looked like there was still some pressure in the tank as that and there when it stopped. So I presume we'll probably see a bit more venting over the next couple of minutes, and then hopefully we will see the pad reopen and the road reopen, so we will know that testing is completed for today. Again, there is another road closure from 7 a.m. to noon tomorrow afternoon, or tomorrow morning, I should say. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we may see a static fire, but that's going to be quite a tight turnaround from this test, given that it's already 9 p.m. on Thursday night. So I'm not sure if they're going to be able to make the static fire window tomorrow, but if not, I have no doubt they will schedule new road closures for next week. So it remains to be seen exactly when Starship SN11 will be able to launch. I know I see people in chat asking that as usual as we see the vent start up again, but really until the static fire happens, there is no launch date. Once the static fire happens, then they can set a more definitive launch date. But right now, with more tests still to go, the testing schedule is very much up in the air.
And we got some super chats here. First from Aaron, donating $5, saying Booster and Starship are different. Starship needs legs. Booster only comes back to Earth, so Catch Tower is fine. And I think that is a solid point there, that the Booster is coming back relatively in a much easier fashion than Starship. Starship has to do the whole belly flop, the whole transition to vertical, all that fun stuff. The Booster just comes down straight. So I think if anything is going to do the Catch Tower, it would be the Booster. So I do agree on that. And Jonas here asking, was it presumed to be successful? It looks at least somewhat like it was successful. I don't believe, like Michael said earlier, SN10 had a sort of incomplete or not full cryogenic test, and yet they moved right ahead. So it looks, nothing here stands out to me as unsuccessful. So it looks like we might have had a solid test tonight. Any thoughts, Michael, Jack?
I wouldn't say incomplete, I would say not as frosty as we've seen before. I'm not sure if that's because they just are putting less LN2 into it, or if it's because they're just getting to the same pressure but letting it boil off and not venting it. So there's probably a lot of different ways you can do a proof test to achieve the objectives you need to do, but I have no doubt that SN10 met all the test objectives before they progressed, and I'm sure that SN11, I mean, from all that we can tell, this was a successful test. Of course, unless SpaceX says something officially, we won't know until they do the static fire, but I expect the static fire to be the next test based on what we've seen today.
Agreed with that. And Hannah here donating $5, asking, how much more robust will the Raptors need to be before Starship is able to meet its goals? That's a solid question there. So it seems like Raptor is almost where it should be right now for terms of Starship. We have seen issues with SN9 where it seemed like a Raptor didn't even ignite, but it seems like they are on the right track to getting Raptor. But we will need to see production of Raptor vacuums as well as production of booster specific Raptor vacuums, also known as the Raptor not Raptor vacuum, sorry, booster versions of Raptor called Raptor Boost. So there are 2 more variants of Raptor that need to enter more rapid production. So they're getting there, but it's still a little while away.
And question from Frank, do you think they could get all 3 Raptors installed for tomorrow? Yes, I do, because they are already installed. SN11 shipped to the pad with all 3 Raptor engines already installed. So once the static fire happens, and I mean, this thing could really be days away from being able to fly because the 3 Raptors are already installed. The static fire could happen as early as tomorrow, and then a day or 2 turnaround for the flight. Although, of course, they do not test on weekends generally, so the earliest possible flight opportunity if the static fire happened tomorrow would theoretically be Monday. Is that likely? No, but is it possible? Yes. But long story short, Raptors are already installed, so expect things to move very quickly, and we are actually seeing a car return to the pad right now on Mary's camera. So that confirms that testing is complete for today. So all in all, we think it was a good proof test, but no way to know for sure because no official information from SpaceX per usual.
And that's a good sign right there. And we have one last super chat here from CPL Dave Walker. Just $25, no comment. Thank you very much for that. That means a lot for your support right there. That'll pay off some of the data used here on the stream, as well as the cameras themselves. So thank you very much for that.
Yep. A big thank you to Mary for being out in the field with this amazing camera view as usual. Definitely awesome to have her view. She got some great captures of that venting from her angle. That was really cool to see tonight, and also that amazing sound off her camera from all of those RCS thruster firings. So definitely a big asset to have Mary out there in the field. We could not do this without her, so thank you so much to Mary. And I think, Ian, we are going to wrap up now because it looks like the road is open, which means there is no chance of further testing this evening.
Yeah, that
Thank you
sounds like
so
a plan
much
to
for
me.
helping out, Ian. Big help having you in commentary.
Yes, sir. Great to be here.
And Jack as well. I don't know if we have good comms with you right now, Jack, but Jack is also in the field in Boca Chica area, at least nearby, helping with the coverage, helping wrangle the robots, and helping get us some content for our daily videos and photos and whatnot. So thank you so much for the help, Jack.
Yeah, sure enough. And speaking of the daily videos, don't forget that we do daily videos, thanks to Mary being out there every single day shooting the dailies. So we did publish a daily video full of updates from today while we were on this stream. So once we wrap this up, be sure to jump over to our feed there and give that a watch if you want to catch up on everything that happened today. But yeah, hopefully this fog can clear up in the next day or two, and if we can progress to a static fire, which is what we would assume is next if this was a successful test, I can get some eyes on it, and we can have my camera angle up for that, and who knows, maybe even SN11's flight sometime next week. Cross your fingers. But thank you everybody for watching, and don't forget to check out that daily video that we published.
Yeah. And we also had DOS on the stream earlier.
Bluebirds, bluebirds, bluebirds.
I don't think it worked that time, Jack. We'll try it again next time, though.
I think you might have to be looking into a. You might have to be looking into a mirror when you say it or something.
Or
we'll
looking
try
into
it
a camera.
Yeah, there you go. Looking into a robotic camera.
He appeared in the back channel, but not on the actual audio. Thank you so much for DOS for helping out. He is at K Space Academy on Twitter if you want to follow him. We also had Chris G on earlier. He is at Chris G_NSF on Twitter. I am Michael Baylor at NASASpaceflight on Twitter. Thank you all for watching. That is going to do it for the NASA Spaceflight broadcast of the Starship SN11 cryogenic proof test. And we will possibly see you tomorrow morning for a static fire, although it remains to be seen if that's actually going to happen. But if it does, if we see the tank farm activity spool up, we will go live for that static fire attempt. So that will most likely be our next live stream. If not, there will also be another episode of NSF Live on Saturday. But until next time, have a good evening, everyone.
Have a good one, y'all.
See you.
Propulsion continues to be normal.
Alright, the chamber pressure looks good.
Doubling up.